At night at the office, no phone calls, no messages, nothing but junk mail and overdue bills to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore, a professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks. All right, folks. Good afternoon. That slips in from the days, guys. Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the July 4th weekend edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN, Radio Central. And, of course, every Sunday, 9 to noon, in tradition of the Peter Bluth Show. Peter's doing well. He's doing his thing, folks. But let's get into it. Yes, what a weekend this has been. 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And I am old enough to not just remember our bicentennial, but I remember I was about 10 years old and going to the events. And one of my favorite, of course, because I think I've talked about in the past, was the Lexington Green and the Paul Revere redo, you know, the what do they call it? Not simulation, you know, the actors who do this, but the recreation or redoing of Paul Revere's run. And we would go to that every year because my aunt and uncle lived right off the coast in Lexington near Wilson's Farm, which is a big thing, but I'll get into that more. There was actually a very traumatic one time when Paul Revere's horse got injured, and well, it's a sad story, so we'll leave that one alone. But I always loved going to the Lexington Green, do this. So here it is 50 years later, and I can remember both, but let's do some housekeeping. Good morning and welcome to the show. First of all, my apologies for a little bit of a late start, and that's on my end. We did some reprogramming with some equipment here yesterday, and there was a little glitch here, and I had to, you know, the old thing, we'll turn it off and turn it back on, which basically we did, and everything reset to where it's supposed to be. My apologies for a late start, but thank you, Russ, for getting some music in there and covering it as a pro. And good morning to you, Russ. Happy 4th and happy 250th, by the way.
Happy 4th to you, Joe. You'll be happy to know that with the red, white, and blue, I happen to have on a white WCRN t-shirt, the WCRN 830 in red, and then the Radio Central with the blue background. I have on my blue jeans. I have white sneakers. I mean, that's almost like you can't get any more patriotic than that. And I hope you enjoyed America the Beautiful when you were working on your end, of course, that version done by Ray Charles.
Yeah, hey, thank you for the music. It was a good choices, very good choices. We got to put the camera in the control room on the other side because you can see now. I was originally going to wear, for those viewing, I was going to wear this red WCRN cap that we had done this past year. I usually wear the old one or the fedora, but today, if you can see for our viewers, I'm wearing the 250th anniversary cap. With it's a good cap. I don't know, Russ, your opinion on that. Anybody can also text us. But the point is, I'm wearing the 250th anniversary just for today in my WCRN shirt. So I'll throw up my numbers.
Hat from what I can see.
Yeah, I thought so, guys. Let's do housekeeping. You can join the conversation over the next 3 hours at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And our text line is up and running, or will be in 2 seconds. 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. You text that like you would anyone else. It appears in the studio on a screen in real time, and we try to work it in. Anybody wants to text in their opinions about my 250th anniversary cap. I'm trying to get the bill right. It got a little something rust on it, so I'll work on that. But as you know, I usually do the fedora. I always have a fedora when I do the show. And if I don't have a fedora, it's either the station cap, and this is the first exception to that, and we're in the 250. Don't forget the station streams, guys, 24/7, like thousands of other radio stations do, to the TuneIn app. So if you don't have TuneIn on your phone or device, literally seconds to download it, punch in WCRN, and you're going to see this really cool logo. And do me a favor, hit the like button, and then we know you're there, and we're very easy to find. And then you can do that. Hey, you can also tell Alexa, play WCRN. She's going to do it, no questions asked. I do stream, so you can always watch the show, guys, on the station's Facebook page, my stuff at Joe Mangiacotti Show. And that's X and Facebook, Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, Rumble, YouTube. You go to so Joe Mangiacotti Show has a YouTube channel and a Rumble channel. And as most of you know, we started using Instagram probably a month ago. And a lot of people are picking up on the Instagram. That's fantastic. My thing I don't like on the Instagram, it doesn't it doesn't just post it. It's in archives and stuff. But if you want to watch it live, you can do it on Instagram. If you ever want to watch the show like this show, but you can't check it out till later, I would suggest Rumble or Facebook. But anyway, that takes care of housekeeping. Russ, obviously behind the glass, flying the board back at HQ, and he'll be taking your calls and getting you set up and into the station for two-way talk and conversation. Elizabeth Dayan is a candidate for treasurer here in Massachusetts. She's going to join us in the second hour, and we're going to talk to her a little bit about the campaign, why she's running, what the auditor is trying to do, all of that good stuff. She identifies as a Baker Republican, Charlie Baker, or is it Charlie Parker? At 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. And it's the day after Independence Day, in my opinion. This is all Independence weekend. And there were fireworks last night, and that was pretty cool. I know that I've mentioned it before because my birthday's the 7th, so it's Tuesday. And I was convinced as a kid that this big cookout that was going on at our house and the cakes and all the people coming over, and then the fireworks somehow was for my birthday. It was connected to my birthday. When you're 5 and 6 and 7, it's easy for you to do that. And of course, my parents said, "Oh yeah, of course, Joey, this is for you." And my sisters were very happy to pop that bubble when I got a little older and said, "What are you, an idiot? It's the 4th of July. It has nothing to do with your birthday." But nonetheless, it's a day after Independence Day. And for a lot of people, this is still very much the holiday weekend. It is for me. And some folks, well, you're traveling, right? Some are going to be at the beach. Maybe you're recovering from yesterday's cookouts. And if you know what I mean, and fireworks and the gathering with the family, maybe a little too much of the potato salad and you feel a little bloated, maybe a little too much celebrating all around. But before we move into the news of the day and get into any politics and the courts and the borders and the economy and campaign trail and headlines and nonsense, and all the things that usually occupy our attention, I'd like to just pause here for a moment, because this weekend is not just about the fireworks, and it's not just about hamburgers and hot dogs and about a long weekend. It's not even just about red, white, and blue paper plates and a parade through town. See, all of that's fine, and it's how we manifest the celebration, and I love all of it. And I'm not here to be the guy who says, don't enjoy the holiday. Are you kidding me? Quite the opposite. Enjoy the heck out of it. Celebrate it. Fly the flag. Light the grill. Watch the fireworks. Stand for the anthem. Take your kids to the parade. Even thank a veteran. Thank a police officer. Thank the neighbor who still knows how to hang a flag properly. But understand what we're celebrating. Because July 4th is not merely the birthday of the country. It is the anniversary of a decision. It is the anniversary of people saying, enough. Enough tyranny, enough distant rule, enough taxation without representation, enough of soldiers in our streets. Enough laws written by people who do not live among us and do not understand us, do not answer to us, and do not respect our God-given rights. July 4th is the day America declared to the world that rights do not come from kings, rights do not come from parliament, rights do not come from government permission slips. Our rights do not come from the bureaucrats or the agencies, the courts, the governors, presidents, or political parties. No. Our rights come from God. Government exists to secure those rights. And when government becomes destructive of those rights, the people have the right and at some point the duty to alter or abolish that government and establish a new one. And that was radical then. It's radical now. It is still radical in all those senses. And that is why the Declaration of Independence still matters. We sometimes forget how dangerous those words were. Read them now in school books or at public ceremonies or in old parchment behind glass at the National Archives. We treat them like sacred American scripture, and in many ways they are. But in 1776, those words were not safe. They were not ceremonial. They were not decorative. They were a death warrant if the revolution failed. The men who signed that document were not just making philosophical arguments. They were not writing an op-ed here, folks. They were not sending a strongly worded letter to the editor. They were committing treason against the most powerful empire on earth. And they knew it. They closed the Declaration with one of the most powerful pledges ever written by free men. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Now stop and think about that. Lives, fortunes, sacred honor. Not likes and not shares and not retweets, not bumper stickers, not slogans, not comfortable patriotism with no consequences. Their lives, their fortunes, that's their property, their businesses, everything to the furniture in their homes and their sacred honor. That's their identity and who they were and who they are as men. They were putting the quill pen to parchment, knowing full well what that meant. If they won, they would be remembered as founders. If they lost, they would be remembered as traitors. If they were remembered at all. And it's a Sunday morning and fairly considered a family show, so we'll not get into the graphic details of what would have been done to them in those days. It is not pretty. And if they lost, the punishment would not have been losing an election here, guys. It would not have been bad press. It would not have been getting yelled at on cable news. It would have been hanging, and it would have been the confiscation of all that property. I don't just mean the acreage of the house, but the property, everything in the house, everything that was their possession. And it could have been prison. It could have meant their wives and children left destitute. It could have meant their names erased, their estates seized, their reputations destroyed, their families punished for generations. Generations, guys. And there were 56 of them. 56 men representing 13 colonies, each knowing that his signature was not symbolic. It was evidence. We talk about courage a lot today. We throw the word around cheaply. Somebody posts something unpopular online and we say, they're courageous. Oh my God, how brave are they? Somebody says something that might annoy their social circle and we call that brave, right? Oh my God, they could offend somebody in Hollywood. The signers of the Declaration put their actual lives, they were real property, the actual families, and their entire futures on the line. And that, my friends, is courage. And it is important to remember that independence was not inevitable. It did not have to happen. For a long time, many colonists still thought of themselves as loyal British subjects. They wanted their rights as Englishmen. They wanted representation, and they wanted limits on royal power. They wanted the old relationship restored. Even Thomas Jefferson, before the final break, was not originally rushing towards total separation from Britain. But there comes a point when government makes reconciliation impossible. There comes a point when a people say, we did not leave liberty, liberty left us. And that is what happened in the American colonies. In Boston, our Boston, Massachusetts, we were at the heart of it. We cannot tell the story of American independence without telling the story of Boston. You cannot tell the story of July 4th without the Sons of Liberty. You cannot tell the story of the Declaration without talking about the men and women in this part of the country who resisted British overreach years before that parchment was adopted in Philadelphia. The Sons of Liberty emerged in the 1760s, especially in response to the Stamp Act. This was the tax imposed on printed materials, newspapers, legal documents, pamphlets, contracts, licenses. Think about it. The British government wanted to tax the very paper in which which colonial political life operated. And the colonists asked a very simple question. Where's our representation? If Parliament can tax us without our consent, what can't it do? That was the principle. It was never simply about tea. It was never simply about stamps. It was never simply about a tax here or a duty there. It was about power. It was about whether free people could be ruled by a distant legislature in which they had no vote, no voice, no meaningful consent. So, no taxation without representation. It was not just a slogan, it was a constitutional argument. It was a warning. And Boston became a center of resistance. The Sons of Liberty were not polite consultants writing memos to Parliament. They were activists in the original sense of the word. They organized, they protested, they spread information, and they resisted. They understood that once a government gets away with violating rights in one area, it will come back for more. And then came the Tea Act. And again, this was not just about tea. Yes, tea was the object, but the issue was control. The issue was monopoly. The issue was Parliament asserting authority over the colonies, and the British East India Company was given favorable treatment. And colonists saw it for what it was: government favoritism combined with taxation without consent. So on December 16th of 1773, the Sons of Liberty and other patriots boarded ships in Boston Harbor and dumped hundreds of chests of tea into the water. And for those that know that history, in the Sons of Liberty, in that night, all started above a certain tavern in Boston during a Masonic meeting. And yeah, most of those guys dressed as Native Americans were third-degree Masons or better. So there was not a random act of vandalism. This was a political statement. that was a message to the crown. We will not be treated as subjects without rights. And how did the British respond? Did they say, maybe we should listen to the colonists? No. They cracked down. They closed Boston Harbor. They altered the Massachusetts Charter. They restricted town meetings. They allowed royal officers accused of crimes to be tried elsewhere. They expanded the quartering of troops. I got to pause here, folks, because we got to take the break, and we'll come back on the other side. And Mark is waiting patiently, so we'll go to the phone, Mark, when we come back on the other side of the break. And before I finish up my opening statements and monologue here. But this is the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. And our text line is 617-297-8388. Stick with us. We will be back on the other side, folks.
Don't put mercury in the trash. Don't put mercury in the trash. Fluorescent lamps, thermometers, thermostats. These could all contain mercury, so let's dispose of them properly. Don't put mercury in the trash. Don't put mercury in the trash. Know your products with mercury, so you can dispose of them properly. Mercury is harmful to human health and the environment. To learn what products in your home may contain mercury and where to safely dispose of them, please contact your local Board of Health or Department of Public Works or visit keepmercuryfromrising.org. Know your products with mercury, so you can dispose of them properly.
Visit keepmercuryfromrising.org, because together we can keep our environment safe. Brought to you by Win Waste Innovations. Performance for the planet.
There's a threat targeting America. One that's growing fast, but may still be hard to see. Lyme disease. Spread by tiny ticks, often smaller than the head of a pin. This dangerous disease is now more widespread than West Nile, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS combined. And if left untreated, it can lead to arthritis, facial paralysis, and even memory and concentration problems, often called brain fog. As the threat of Lyme disease grows to more than 300,000 projected cases each year, it's time for us to target Lyme disease. That means checking for ticks when you've been outside, even in your own backyard. It means seeing a doctor if you experience the symptoms of Lyme disease, which can include joint pain, flu-like symptoms, fever, fatigue, or sometimes a bullseye-shaped rash. Set your sights on stopping Lyme. Learn how you can target Lyme disease at targetlyme.org. Brought to you by the Stephen and Alexandra Cohen Foundation and this station.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the second half of the first hour on the Sunday edition, Independence Weekend edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available. Of course, the text line, 617-297-8388. And I still have a little more thoughts on what my opening monologue is, but there are phone calls here, so let's go to the phones first. Mark is up. Hey, Mark, happy Independence Day and 250th. What say you?
Well, I was listening to your monologue. Brief review of what led up to the revolt in 1776 and the Declaration of Independence. You brought up taxation without representation. Well, I hate to tell you, folks, it's 250 years later and you still got taxation without representation.
Yes, we do.
I'll bring out another thing, too. Only 1/3 of the colonists, okay?
Yeah.
Whatever the age of consent was at that time, 18 or 17, 21, I don't know. But of that population, only 1/3 were active participants in the actual
Yeah.
revolution. The
Good
other
point.
third were just sat it out, and the other third were loyalists to King George. So it was only 1/3 of the adult population that defeated the largest military power at that time on the face of the earth, bar none. They never talk about that either.
Mark, that is a great point, and that's true. Even Jefferson, right? Even those that became instrumental in the revolution wanted to have some kind of different relationship, but still as British citizens. They still wanted to be subjects, but they wanted a little rights and so forth. What it really took was the king's reaction in the crackdown. And when I said the thing about the quartering, and I said I'll get into that, because they basically allowed any British officer and then soldier to come and take over your home, kick you out of your own bedroom. You could stay in your house, but you were treated like a dog. And that on top of the other ways that they, at times, unfortunately, guys, they were brutal to some of these colonists, because in their opinion, they were royal subjects who were getting out of line. They were getting uppity, and that they had every right to treat them poorly. And once these colonists who were saying, hey, simply, let's have a voice at the table, right? I mean, think about the time. It's the 1700s. Crossing the Atlantic Ocean could have been a death sentence. It was very dangerous. And they were so far away, having no idea what they were dealing with. Don't forget, the colonists were dealing with no infrastructure. They were frontiersmen here, right? They had to build everything from scratch and create some kind of ecosystem, while all dealing with the Native Americans who were, let's just say, not happy that their land was being confiscated like this. So they had all kinds of things going on that the king and the British subjects in known Britain then couldn't relate to. Some thought it was exciting and they wanted to go check it out. But the king's reaction to the colonists is what actually tipped it further on that, Mark. Mark, any other point before we let you go? Is he
Mark is gone.
He's gone. Okay. All right, folks. Thank you, Mark, for the call. Always appreciate it. Really do. 508-871-7000. And I've got some of my course Catan coffee here, guys. So give me a second while I get a little dry mouth. Let's go to New Hampshire, where Ken is waiting patiently. Happy 4th of July and 250th anniversary birthday here, Ken. What's up?
Good morning, Joe, and likewise. Let me say, first and foremost, it's always an honor to follow retired veteran Mark, who always has his insight that is nice to hear. But your first half hour that you just delivered, by far the finest ever, starting with Russ's music, which, Russ, you're never going to top that. Don't be discouraged. You can't top Ray Charles on the 250th.
He did do a great job. Thank you, Russ. Yes.
I hadn't heard anybody these last few days. That's the first time I've heard the Ray Charles, and I was just in tears, because it's the most appropriate music to play this weekend, by far.
Yeah.
I don't know if Russ just came to it right away, but he hit the best that could be.
Well, Ken, let me add this to you. That was absolutely on the fly, because the glitch I had with the board and stuff here was a minute before going live. And I messaged him and said, hey, you got to cover this. I've got to do the reset, get everything redone. So Russ pulled that literally on the fly. And last minute, he picked the songs or pulled them up. So very good job on that. Thank you.
Spectacular. And obviously your historical review that followed, I doubt anybody in New England is doing. And it was spectacular.
Thank you.
All appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you. I can dive into the Sons of Liberty and that night because again, it's not something that's really talked about in the history books. I don't even know if Tea Party's even taught in grammar school anymore. But those were all Masons, Ken. Those
was my grandfather.
Right. So that was a Masonic meeting above the tavern, and those were all Masons that dressed up as the Native Americans to go dump the tea. And the history of the Masons running through the Revolution, as we all know, they were all Masons, right? George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson. And that's why you see so much borrowed from Masonic lodge and Masonic teachings in the Constitution, in the Declaration. It's pulled from that. So many things in our society, right? Everything from the gavel a judge uses to the term third degree, to you see it in our dollar bills. You see Masonics, basically the way that the Washington, D.C. is laid out is Masonic symbolism. So the Masons had a lot to do with it. And don't forget that they were all Masons who came from Britain, where it was a very big thing in Britain. So it was an interesting conflict when it came to wartime, Ken, because you had brother Masons having to fight brother Masons on the battlefield. And obviously, I think everybody would assume one of the things you swear to as a Mason is never to harm a brother Mason. And it was a difficult thing for one Mason to take the life of another Mason if they knew them to be it, which is why, and again, I don't know how much this would be in a history book, but there are certain phrases and terminology, right? That's part of the whole secrecy of the Masons. Again, Masons aren't a secret society. They are a society with secrets. And if you were on the receiving end of a bayonet that was about to pierce you, there would be a phrase that you could say. Now, if they weren't a Mason, Ken, it would mean nothing to that soldier. However, if they were a brother, it would have stopped them in their tracks. And it would have spared your life. And when people like Benedict Arnold, would you agree he's gone down in history as probably one of the world's most notorious traitors? I mean, there have been a lot of traitors, right? Why Benedict Arnold? Why is Benedict Arnold the best known traitor? I'll tell you why. Because he didn't just commit treason against this newfound government and society. He betrayed the Masons. And he betrayed the Masons by sharing the secrets of the Masons and the words, and it was decided by them that he will go down in history as the world's worst traitor, because he was a treasonous to not just this experiment, but also to the Masons, and that's why the Masons made sure he'd be known as a traitor. But anyway, we digress. Thank you.
Interestingly, you bring up Benedict Arnold. He lived where I was born, Norwich, Connecticut.
Yep.
Look it up.
And he was one hell of a general for us, guys, right? Benedict Arnold was a fantastic general. And he was not happy that George Washington became commander-in-chief here. I mean, commander of the entire Revolutionary Army. Benedict Arnold thought he should have been the George Washington of the fight.
Joe, I have to have another big compliment also. The hat. Now, in general, you look better in a fedora.
Thank you.
You do the baseball caps. This is by far the best baseball cap ever. No ifs, ands, or buts.
You like it, huh?
If when you wear a cap in your studio for the remainder of the year, it should be this one. Period.
Yeah, I think if I do, like I said, I mean, obviously the fedora is my normal thing and my signature look and all that, but I think I can sport this 250 anniversary from time to time.
And the amazing thing, Joe, is it's frayed in the front. I love that.
Yeah, maybe like that. They kind of. I got to reshape it. I got to put the.
No.
No, you like this?
Don't change it.
You think it looks good? All right, I can leave it like this.
Keep it just the way it is. It's perfect because actually the shape highlights the words on the red, which is what matters. You distinctively see the 250. Okay,
Yeah.
now I know what this is all about.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, if I can cross over a great history, but to this week's history, I wanted to at least be brief. Trump versus Barbara. Now, many of us conservatives, having just witnessed this, consider this a defeat. Oh, no. Yeah, okay. But for the left, this is a very Pyrrhic victory. Now, I'm not going through the history of where the term Pyrrhic victory came from. The point I'm making
say that again because I got to hold my earpiece. Say that one again.
Okay.
The term what?
I'm saying the decision earlier this week, Trump versus Barbara, birthright citizenship. And by the way, we should never call it birthright citizenship again. Don't use their language. Simply call this case Trump versus Barbara. And drill it over and over, because that's what the left does. They repeat things, and before you know it, you accept lies. That's just the way it's been all our lives.
Ken, I want to just a second here, because you make a great point there. And I know I've talked about this in the past, but the freedom of speech also means you're not compelled to say things. And the left has done a very craftful use of that. And you find that all of a sudden, people are using the terminology, the verbiage that the left wants you to use, and they don't quite know why. But if you go to use what it should be or what it has been, you get chastised for it. Like even things like, the master bedroom. Oh, we don't say that anymore. No, you might not say that anymore. But if that means something bad to you, that's on you, not me. Because the term in that case, in that context, right? Master switch, master valve. We have master everything, which has a very distinctive, and it was used in that way back in the day. But it's just an example, right? I remember Peterson, I think, was on CNN, and some young person on the thing, he said illegal alien, and he tried to. So you can't, and he didn't say, "Oh, that's preferred to say" or anything. He said, "You can't say that." And he snapped at Peterson. Peterson's like, "Who are you? Who are you to tell me that?" Especially since the actual term in the statute is illegal alien. And this is, so you're making a great point, is don't think you have to change and use the verbiage they want you to use. You use the legal terms, you use the universal accepted terms, right? They're trying to make us say birthing person instead of mother. They're trying to re-establish or re-identify things like mother, father, and parents. You don't have to do that. That's not a law, guys. It's propaganda. It's brainwashing. It's stuff that you don't have to fall for. Sorry, Ken, but I had to get into that for a second because your point was fantastic, and I wanted to drill down on that for a second because it's so frustrating when you see this. It's Orwellian. I mean, so Orwellian, right? What was the whole thing in the doublespeak in the language? And the whole concept was, if you can control the language, you can control the thought. And in George Orwell's 1984, they were trying to reduce the number of words that we had available to use, because if your vocabulary is limited, it's hard to express. And if you only use these few words because it's not good, bad, horrible, it became good and ungood. That's your option. How free can you think, right? How creative can your mind be if your ability to express different emotions and feelings is so limited, Ken? Can't happen. So no, don't fall into that. I take your point. don't use their language.
Joe, all of what you just said, so appropriate. And let me state also, the way in which you deliver the truth matters. Calmly, confidently, with a smile and a twinkle in your eye. That's all you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that will win the day with time. And do that every day from here on in. And we will win. So getting back to the case, I read about half of it, which takes quite a while because it's almost 200 pages. But that, all of which was written, 2/3 of which was in dissent, by the way. Alito by far.
Yeah.
Oh, he did a.
Yeah. No, they got it wrong.
What you have to realize is what he put down on paper will live forever. In other words, future decisions will tap into what he wrote and his others. Thomas was very good. Gorsuch and Kavanaugh didn't say much. That's okay. Alito is spectacular. And they are going to cite what he put in that opinion to ultimately reverse Trump versus Barbara in the same manner virtually as what we thought was going to be law forever. We know what that was, don't we? What preceded Dobbs.
Yeah.
The Wade decision, right?
Absolutely. They got that so wrong. I was surprised that Amy Court Barrett there, or whatever her name is. Look, the dissent was well written, and they understood. First of all, he understood the national security issues, but also, and I forget. I think it was last Wednesday or what day I did this on the show. And he does make a little. No, I think it's Kavanaugh makes a little reference to the whole thing of the time, right? This was also put into effect right after the Civil War because we had all of these human beings that the law only recognized as chattel today, and then tomorrow they're people. And then they wanted him to be not quite a full person, right? And what about their citizenship? So it was addressed in that amendment was made to address this specifically. And it was beyond the comprehension of anyone at that time that the world would be so small. And what I mean by that is, again, I made reference to it earlier, right? About being ruled by this distant land. To get from Europe to the United States would take weeks upon weeks, and it was very dangerous. So they couldn't conceive of the idea that you could be in London and several hours later you could be in New York or Washington. And if you wanted to, you could be back in London all within the same day. That would have blown their minds. In the telecommunications, the ability to communicate instantly around the globe, no one had that, even as a concept, with the exception of maybe in the 1890s, Nikola Tesla probably did. But he was a man out of time. So this was not, but they did know the dangers of foreign entities and assets coming to America. This is why presidents have to be born here. They knew then, even in the 1770s, that England or other nations could put people on our soil to become president as, well, we would call them sleeper agents today. So I think they got this wrong. And when it comes to someone here illegally, there's a very old common law term, and I know you know this, Ken, fruit of the deadly tree. So if you are not recognized to be legally here, why is your offspring then recognized to be here as a citizen? They're recognized, it's a human being was born, but they should be the citizenship of the mother who gave birth to them, not just basically tied to the geographical location at the time.
Joe, let me surprise you and your listeners on what I think should have been the ruling.
Please.
I think this should have been a 9-0 ruling.
Yep.
In the manner that Kavanaugh came up with. What do I mean by that? I mean that I think it's wonderful that Trump tested. He pushed on the issue, because immigration everything right now as to where our nation goes. And no one else until Trump had the courage, or at least as a president, to challenge this whole concept of birthright citizenship, which is bogus. But it is not within the executive to decide, which is basically what Kavanaugh was saying. Kavanaugh ruled as part of the 6-3 majority that null and void the executive order. I'm fine with that. But he also stated this is the purview of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
All 9 of them should have come up with that conclusion, leaving it to Congress through their statutes to change all of the mess that you just described, because the Constitution clearly leaves it within them to take action. And on top of it, the interesting thing that I haven't heard anybody talk about, I read it myself, decision. I was like, wait a minute. Here's the critical issue. And they were kind of in unity. Anybody who was part of that 197-page document said that the 14th Amendment is ambiguous, really doesn't give us clarity in making a ruling. And if that's the case, hand it back to the Congress. That's what our form of government is supposed to do. It is in their hands to settle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Brett Kavanaugh left that open and suggested it, right? Basically, hey.
Right. He was the one that took that distinct position.
Yeah.
And of all the 9 and how they ruled on this, I think he got it right. And they all should have been with him. And it really shows you the coward that Roberts is. You know, people are complaining about Amy Coney Barrett. It's rather simple. In big decisions, she just votes exactly the way Roberts does.
Yeah.
So it's Roberts that we should be looking at primarily. The guy's a coward. That's simple.
Yeah.
He just came up. He literally went back and said, well, we have to do the King of England's way, common law. What? You're days away from our 250th anniversary of the independence. That just slaps our nation. And the words that you use, you're a coward.
But, you know, our legal system is based on old common law, and it's not a salute to the king. It's a salute to the legal system, because it has given us some great principles. I mean, so has the Magna Carta, right? But it's what legal scholars have used as a guide, and I'm glad that it carried forth, because so much of how we look at law and we adjudicate in the courtrooms, the origin or the foundation does come from that. Again, it's not a salute to the monarchy. It's a salute to the legal profession.
Right.
And it's guided us for hundreds, actually thousands of years.
But as you perfectly just described, the capacity that we have now is nothing like 700 to 800 years when this all started, common law. I think 1200. You know,
1215. Yeah. Crazy.
So, given that context, then you need a today legislative body to solve today's issue.
Yeah. Agreed. We're against the clock. Did you do a big cookout yesterday, Ken? Or
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
My wife did a spectacular.
Yeah.
We had the burgers and hot dogs. And for dinner.
Nice. I mean, I was looking, but my invitation must have got lost in the mail.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, seriously, you ought to come. If you want to come up, I got a pool. You're gonna love it.
Yeah. Now this is a big week. I got the big 6-0 on Tuesday, guys. So that's
nice.
And then we got a big party going on next Saturday, actually. you know Jerry Doherty, right? So he's having a birthday party for me at his place, which, you know,
Wonderful.
beautiful saltwater pool and all kinds of stuff happening. But yeah, it's going to be a very active week for me with the big birthday and actually a wedding on Saturday for me. So I won't be in next Sunday.
Do well, and Russ should come up with some music in the last 2 hours. That's appropriate.
Yeah. Next Sunday actually is going to be my guest host sitting in for me. If you all know Matthew J. from Philadelphia. So he has a show down there, and he actually does some things. He'll appear in some stuff with us from the Frontiers of Freedom Institute, the think tank down there that I'm a senior fellow at. So Matthew works with us there a little bit. So I asked him to sit in for me next Sunday. So he'll be filling in. So the show will be here. I won't be. But Ken, thank you so much. We got to run because of the clock. I appreciate the call. I always do appreciate the call. All right, folks, we're going to take a break, and then we'll wrap up hour one of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on this Independence weekend. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. 508-871-7000. Don't forget the text line is up and running at 617-297-8388. Come back on the other side with Elizabeth Dion, and we'll have a little chat with her, folks. Stick with us back on the other side.
You're listening to WCRN Worcester.
Fox News, I'm Angelo Bavaro. President Trump addressing Americans on the National Mall to celebrate the 4th of July.
We have thrived and flourished because our founders were great. Our cause was just, our people are brave, our culture is exceptional, and our destiny is written by God.
Storms did prompt a 2-hour evacuation of the National Mall. America will be watching as the U.S. takes on Belgium tomorrow in the World Cup. The round of 16 continues.
France worked hard for its win over Paraguay yesterday. The powerhouse team scoring off a penalty kick from captain Kylian Mbappe.
Fox's Madeline Rivera. The death toll from last week's devastating earthquakes in Venezuela continues to climb, about 2,900. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you having trouble hearing? Hearing loss can devastate the quality of your life. Now, there's an affordable fix for you or your loved one. Rated the best hearing aids of 2026 by Forbes Health, Audion Hearing has the highest quality hearing aids at the lowest prices, starting at just $98 a pair.
I actually like them better than my old $5,000 hearing aids.
I could not believe how my hearing and life changed.
Join over 1 million happy customers by going to audionhearing.com. That's AUDIEN hearing.com.
And the match is about to begin. Most of the team is out with COVID-19, so there'll be some substitutes tonight.
What's this? We have an unexpected guest on the field.
It's a dog that they could do with extra players.
She's going for the ball.
Are front paws hands or feet?
Soccer season is full of surprises, and COVID-19 could be one of them. If you test positive, prescription medications may help. Ask your doctor if they're right for you. Learn more at PfizerForAll.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second hour of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. And we'll get into the studio for two-way talk and conversation. Russ is flying the board back at HQ, so he will get you set up. Don't forget our text line is running at 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. And I just want to, well, that's good for housekeeping. So let me do this. Invite into the conversation, as promised, Elizabeth Dion. First of all, hey, Liz. Ooh, hey, Elizabeth. Welcome to the show. And you were there 1 second ago. And if you guys are watching on streaming, Elizabeth was right there. I was bringing her in, and then her screen went blank. So she obviously might be having a little bit of a problem with her connection on her end. So let's give her a moment to see if she can work that out. and we'll do our best, I guess. But Elizabeth is a Republican, and she's running for the September 1st, 2026 primary here in Massachusetts for the state treasurer's office. Now, the general election, as we know, is in November, and she's challenging the incumbent Democrat Deborah Goldberg. Now, Elizabeth positions herself as the taxpayer's treasurer, emphasizing fiscal responsibility, transparency, accountability, returning more local aid to cities and towns amid concerns over state spending, and the return of Taxachusetts as our label. And we've had that for a very, very long time, right? Let me check if Elizabeth, can you hear us? Because I think
I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't have the picture, but
yeah, I'm trying to get video access. So for whatever reason, my computer, which has never done this before, was not liking your audio. But I can hear you, and I'm on my phone.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I mean, we can continue. Oh, there you are now.
Okay, great. Well,
yeah. So,
whatever I did seemed to have fixed it. So apologize
right.
for the technical difficulties.
Okay. So here we are. Very good, guys. So if you're streaming, we're good there. I was kind of doing your introduction, so I don't know. You tell me how I did. Did you hear it? I mean,
I could hear you. I could hear you. Yes.
So let's talk about this a little bit. You're challenging Goldberg, who has been there. I go back when I was remember in the 1990-92. Remember Joe Malone got that job?
Oh, not only do I remember Joe Malone, Joe has been a great advisor to me. He actually let me read his unpublished manuscript about his memoir of his time in the treasurer's office. Truly remarkable. One of the things I had not realized is Joe was really young. He was just in his 30s. And talk about someone who had a clear moral compass at a very young age. I am really shocked. One of the first things that happened was John Connolly took him out to lunch in the North End and basically said, well, you can do this your way or Billy Bulger's way, and I recommend Billy Bulger's way. And Joe said, no, thanks, I'm going to do my way, which is what the voters elected him to do. He was truly a reform candidate, and I am a reform candidate in the same mold. It has been since 1998, since we've had a Republican in that office, and that is far too long. People do not understand the importance of the treasurer's office, and I didn't either until I did a deep dive. The treasurer's office controls up to 20% of the state budget. It's massively powerful. It's massively important.
And don't forget the lottery.
Yes, the lottery, but also the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission. Until just a few months ago, the Cannabis Control Commission, which got taken away from the incumbent because she bungled it so badly that every member of her party voted against her in the House and all but one in the Senate. And Ron Mariano called the Cannabis Control Commission a train wreck. So, and this is a woman who doesn't even live in the state full time. She's entitled. She's the heir to the Stop and Shop fortune. She spends, we think, about a third of her time in her third home in Palm Beach. She's literally not in the state. At a minimum, the very ground level, voters deserve.
I didn't realize she was Stop and Shop money.
Yeah. So we think she spent about $5 million of her parents' money, now her money, to essentially run for office in Massachusetts.
I was going to say, so see these pictures behind me. One of those is actually Joe Malone. I think it was taken at one of my events when I ran for state senate in 92 at Ken's Steakhouse. And Joe Malone was a rock star back then. I mean, he went in there, he reformed. And for those that are of a certain age, like myself, you'll remember that everybody in the treasurer's office, and especially in the lottery commission, would get brand new town cars, Lincoln town cars, to drive as their state vehicle, not little Chevy, sedans or town cars. And the first thing he did is that was end. But the point is, he was a breath of fresh air reformer, and I was fortunate enough that he endorsed me and supported me in my candidacy. So he will always have a special place.
He was desperately needed. People may not remember that Joe came in after 27 years of Bob Crane being treasurer. Bob wasn't only the most corrupt treasurer we've ever had. He was proud of it. He flat admitted that he'd become a millionaire as treasurer, and that's because he was taking side payments from other companies as their consultant. And I'm sure they had no business before the treasurer's office. I'm sure there was no connection between the side payments he was receiving.
Only in Massachusetts.
Also,
well, maybe Minnesota and California, that I was going to say, would a public servant brag about becoming a millionaire well on a public service salary. But certain places like Massachusetts.
He also bragged about patronage. Well, the Boston Globe called him a lovable rogue. So, it's okay to be a Democrat and corrupt, but as Republicans, we fight corruption. We don't want to be corrupt. I would never not only not brag about that, but I will say, I think my integrity is unimpeachable. I am not a professional politician. I'm absolutely entering this because
let's talk about that.
Someone to step forward.
Elizabeth, let's talk about that. First of all, tell the listeners, tell me, what is your background and what was the catalyst to say I'm right? Because you haven't run for anything before, correct? Or have you? I don't know.
Well, I've run locally. I've been a 10-year local elected official.
All right.
But this is my first.
Local to what?
This is my first
selectman
statewide
or
run.
tell me what you've been elected to in the past.
So I started with town meeting, which is very active in Belmont, and very quickly became a member of the finance committee. And then very quickly after that, so I held all of these together, then became chair of the community preservation committee. And so in all of those areas, I had intensive exposure to our annual budgets, really deep dives. And then decided after my husband and I have raised our 4 children here in Massachusetts, decided to run for select board because there were a series of reforms that I'd been working on, but we really needed someone on the select board to shepherd them through. So I did that, became known as the relentless reformer. We reformed our finance team. We restructured our departments to deliver services more efficiently. We reformed our pension fund investments. As chair, for the first time in Belmont's history, we moved to long-term budgeting, which allowed us to do a revenue-based budget as opposed to just reacting to what we saw that year. But the most important thing that I did was work really hard to revise our zoning bylaw to be more business-friendly, to allow more economic development. And I looked at all of these things that I'd shepherded through over my 10 years in office. None of them's enough. We have a crisis in each of our cities and towns, and that crisis is directly caused by the state. The state is not returning enough money in local aid. So we rank 39th out of 50th for local aid. The state keeps the money and it gives us the responsibility. And I looked and I see a tsunami that's going to hit every city and town. And if I'm going to help Belmont, I need to help all 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. And why the treasurer's office? First of all, every one of those 12 departments I've interacted with as a select board member. I'm an attorney and a select board member. The incumbent is an attorney who was a select board member. But I do think that our similarities end there in that the 5th of 10 children, I was not born privileged. I lived the American dream as of my husband. He was the 3rd son of a single mom on an Idaho farm. So we understand the value of a dollar. And right now, Beacon Hill has too many people who don't understand what dollars mean to family budgets. So I'm running to help my town, to help every city and town in Massachusetts. And there's 3 major issues that we need to address and can. The first is transparency. The first thing that Joe Malone did when he went into the treasurer's office was a thorough audit of every department.
Yeah.
We need to do that again. And the great news is, as a statewide constitutional officer, I run the department. I don't need to wait for the legislature. So I can not only audit my own department, but I can be a voice to join the state auditor, pressuring the legislature to do the right thing. Yeah. As a local elected official, we abided by open meeting law. We abided by public records law. The state imposes those requirements on us, and they're difficult, but they're good.
Right.
Why does the state not impose the same requirements on itself? That's just the height of hypocrisy, and I think corruption, frankly.
Yeah, I think we're seeing this, right, with Diane and the state auditor, and then we voted, right, for audits in the legislature once again. And this is not an isolated incident. The state legislature in Massachusetts constantly ignores the will of the people and what we're voted for. And I know, and I'm one of the people who says, well, wait a minute, if we voted on a referendum and it passes, how can they ignore it? But boy, do they find
Oh, I've got the answer for you.
loopholes. Yeah,
Because
please.
we are effectively a one-party system. There are no checks and balances on Beacon Hill. If people want the legislature to behave differently, they have got to stop voting with their feet and leaving Massachusetts, which we're seeing. We need them to stay and vote in the
That's
ballot box in November.
Right, 100%, Elizabeth, right? And two issues you said there. One is the mass exodus from Massachusetts. And
Yep.
let's put a pin in that for a second and go back to it, because that is not, yes, there's problems in this state, and I hope that, or I'd rather people fix the problems than go to Florida or Texas or another red state. And I
or
get
North
it.
Carolina or New
Or
Hampshire,
North Carolina.
which is where they're all going.
I understand it. Okay. But I have very deep roots here. I mean, other than having a family business that's based in Massachusetts, that's mine to run now, in this business, broadcasting is a very, nomadic type of thing, right? In shore, over the 40 plus years I've been radio, you get offers to, we'll go to Cincinnati and you work your way up to big markets. I stayed here. Yeah, I did New Hampshire and all that, but I never left Massachusetts, and it's just where my family is. So I hope people would fix it. But to fix it, you have to change the behavior. And the biggest thing is to change the people we elect and we put on Beacon Hill. But here's the old problem with that, Elizabeth. They're all bums and they're all rats and they got to go, except for my guy. Right? My guy has to stay there,
Yeah.
And that's the problem that we have, is they want everyone else. They don't like to go, but my guy is my guy and they got to stay there.
So ask your guy.
This means you
is
got to
the litmus
fire
test.
your guy sometimes.
Yeah. Or what you have to say to your guy is, do you promise me that you will vote for this audit? That their vote is contingent. Call your local representatives. Let them know that you want this audit. So
On
we
the
know
record,
that
promise that.
on the record. We know that and don't be afraid to cast a vote for somebody else. So maybe your guy wins, but he wins by a really slim margin. Well, that's going to scare him, and maybe he'll start listening to you.
Yeah.
So you vote at the ballot box. My husband and I are both originally from the West, but we both went to school here. Our 4 children are born and raised here. Another major reason that I jumped into the race is that our 4 children cannot afford to live and raise their families here, and neither can their friends or classmates. And the largest demographic that we're losing, we are only 4th in the nation for population loss. We would be first, except that because of our first in the nation migrant benefits, we're replacing our taxpayers with people who are joining our welfare rolls. I don't blame them. It's a rational act. I would also go to the state that would offer me the most benefits. But the reality is that we're losing the people who pay for them, increasing the pull on the state budget.
Yeah.
And so we have got to tackle affordability. And what people don't understand is the state treasurer's office has a direct relation to affordability, because the state treasurer's office, you mentioned the lottery. The lottery is the 4th largest source of state revenue and the single largest source of unrestricted local aid. And as a 10-year local elected official, we watched that local aid budget, and it's not gone where we need it to go. In the same period of time, maybe 12 years, that the state budget has doubled, local aid's gone up only 25%. That's not even keeping pace with inflation. So we're in a world of hurt. And every time that you get asked for a property tax override, the reason you're being asked for that override is because the state is not giving your town or city sufficient funds for education, for streets, for roads, for water infrastructure, for public safety, your police and firefighters. It is directly a result of state action. So I want to be up on Beacon Hill, first of all, to ensure fair allocation of lottery revenues, and also to increase them. They've been falling under the incumbents because she's put a lot of unqualified patronage hires in positions of responsibility. But I want to, first of all, look at lottery revenues and how they're distributed. But secondly, taxpayers need a voice on Beacon Hill who will say to the legislature, you have got to stop starving our cities and towns. You keep all the money for your pet projects, and you do not give enough for the basic functioning of government.
Well, I want to drill down on a couple of things and have some questions, but you were talking about you would come here too, and I talked about this many years ago, and some people didn't believe me, but back in the 80s, did you know that in Miami, because we had a very big influx, or especially from Cuba and so forth, we always have, but the public transportation in Miami would put signs in the buses that's in Spanish that said, go to Massachusetts, because we were known as this welfare state and that the benefits were so great, even if you were illegal, that Florida said, hey, you know how we get rid of this problem? We tell them where to go. And that's what they did. Spanish signs on the public transportation. That was crazy. But let's drill into a
No, I
couple
want to
of
be clear. I
Yeah.
want to be clear that actually I am very much in favor of legal immigration because those immigrant communities disproportionately start businesses. They work very hard. They've got
Yeah,
community and
but the
family
key
values.
word is legal immigration.
Legal, exactly,
Legal.
exactly.
All four of
And
my
they're actually,
grandparents were
yeah, they're
migrants who came here, and they went through Ellis Island, and they went through the process that you have to go through. No problem with that. It's the illegal, the unvetted, unknown, the criminal. I mean, and then every law that we have is leveraged for the bad guys. They use our own laws, meaning the cartels, the coyotes, and so forth. They use it. They know better than most American citizens what the steps are and what the law is when you get here. They know. They teach people what are the words you use, right, to get your asylum, to get your court, to get a report order, order to appear versus order to report. This is all done. So I think everybody, and if we look at the polls, everybody understands, except there's a political element here who we're back to wanting to force us to use verbiage that clouds the issue. And they want us to start using migrant as a catch-all to include illegals so that you don't make that distinction, because they don't want that distinction. It doesn't matter what they want.
Well,
The law is the law. It is what it
if you
is.
can control language, yeah, if you can control language, you can control thought. So
Very
this
Orwellian.
is, I believe absolutely. When talk about Orwellian. Orwellian was the air quotes transparency bill that the State House passed a few weeks ago, basically limiting the auditor's rights, limiting the court's rights, and then calling it transparency. War is peace, ignorance is strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, just you said Orwellian, and that's what I kept thinking.
Right, because every time I see how they're phrasing things and doing things, I'm saying, my goodness, this George Orwell would be like, damn, I didn't get it right. I could have gone further, because they did.
So, yeah. So I want to go back. The Treasurer's Office, I want to be clear what it does and doesn't do, and it does far more than people realize. But there are also constraints. It's not an area where the treasurer really interacts with immigration policy, but the treasurer, again, has a profile, a bully pulpit, a place on Beacon Hill where I can at least be representing the voices of the unheard. And so we're not going to solve the supermajority problem in the legislature immediately, but if voters rally behind my campaign and send me to Beacon Hill, that will send a huge message to the legislature that voters really care about transparency. They really care about affordability. And I promise that I will be an unrelenting and clear voice for the voters on those two areas. And again, that I can implement transparency for 20% of the state budget. I can certainly help with affordability by trying to increase the revenues that the state treasurer's office produces for local cities and towns. But we need more, but it's a critically important start.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I mean, the registry was sold way back in the day when it came into be, that it was going to be so great for cities and towns, and all this money would come in, local aid and taxpayer relief. Now, Massachusetts cities and towns, they're struggling with rising costs, right? Look at they want to challenge Prop 2.5 and all that. But as treasurer, how would you use your local government experience to advocate for and ensure more state aid flows back to the communities without increasing the overall tax burden of the residents?
So it's important not only to have the treasurer's office, but we must capture the governor's office in November of 26. State spending has exploded under Mara Healy. But with that explosion of state spending, there has not been a meaningful increase in aid to cities and towns. And there is actually, we see every week a new fraud story. And so Mike Minogue has been going around, and I have endorsed Mike Minogue, has been talking about the fact that if we can capture the governor in the treasurer's office, we have Leah Foley as the U.S. representative or the U.S. attorney, and we've got Diana DeZoglio, who's a Democrat, but absolutely committed to the good of the people and to transparency. You'd actually have a very, very powerful group of people there to influence policy. The reason that you need both the treasurer and the governor is for historical reasons. So the reason the treasurer's office is so powerful is Massachusetts is a much more purple state than people realize. 7 of our last 10 governors were Republicans, and I'm going to claim Ed King as honorary because he challenged Mike Dukakis and beat him as a fiscal conservative. So if you're looking at fiscal conservatism, 8 of the last 10 were ours. And we did really, really well with those governors. But the legislature realized that patronage hires would suffer. And so Frank Sargent was governor when the lottery was adopted. Hence, the lottery went to Bob Crane. And then when Mitt Romney was governor, the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission got taken from the governor and given to the treasurer. And then when cannabis was adopted, the Cannabis Control Commission didn't go to Charlie Baker. It went to Deb Goldberg, the incumbent. So what you can see is if we don't have both of those offices, if I go in and we don't have a Republican governor, the legislature is just going to turn around and take all those offices away from me. If we win the governor but not the treasurer's office, they're going to keep all this power in the treasurer's office. Voters, we need both these offices. The treasurer's office and the governor's office are irrevocably linked right now when it comes to transparency and affordability. You have got to work for both those offices this year. And
Hey,
both
every
of them
once
are
in a
winnable.
while, you just got to clean house, Elizabeth, right? You got to shake it up and put it in there. And, I've talked about this so many times that found when this country, because here we are in Independence Weekend, when our country was founded, man, our founding fathers could not envision career politicians doing this for 40 or 50 years, both state government and federal government. They were men who, first of all, if you were from a southern state, how long did it take you to get to Washington with a buggy, all right, a horse and carriage? It was a big deal. And they understood that they would put their farm and their law practice or their whatever on hold, or maybe hopefully the family could run it. They would go do their time. They would serve and then get out of there and go back and do their life. The idea of a career politician was crazy. Yeah. And to have a salary that's almost 3 times the median income of a citizen, and who doesn't become a millionaire after at least 2 terms? I mean, let's go down the list.
Absolutely. So my 10 years, so I am not a professional politician. I am doing this out of a genuine desire to help reform, to serve, to frankly save our state. So my 10 years of local service, which was a lot of time, was essentially uncompensated. And then when I was on the select board, received a stipend that was under $400 a month. So it was pretty minimal.
Wow. How much?
So it was about $400 a month. My post-tax was in the 300s. So believe me, on a per hour basis, I was not making minimum wage. That's
New
not why
Hampshire was and I was a news director at a New Hampshire station, Nashua, New Hampshire. And when I covered the legislature, I don't know if it's still that today, they only met every 2 years. So there were a lot of them. I think all they got was a plate, right? License plate that said whatever. I think they got free tolls and something, 600 maybe. It wasn't a career move.
I heard their stipend was something like $100 a year, that it was really
it was
small.
it was irrelevant.
So Deborah Goldberg, the incumbent, a couple things about her. Again, multimillionaire, inherited all her money from her parents' Stop and Shop fortune. So her salary right now is $229 or $229,000. And for that, she does not work full time and does not live in the state full time. So at a minimum, my husband and I own 1 residence, not 3. I pledge that as the taxpayer's treasurer, I will live full time in the state and I will work full time for that salary. And I will actually come in person to meetings. I won't miss them or phone it in. There is a reason that nobody knows who this very powerful person is. because she's not present. She's not out in the community. She doesn't attend events. She's not campaigning right now. I am out hitting parades, hitting community events. Nobody ever
Because she
sees her.
feels she doesn't
She
have
doesn't
to.
care. She's
Yeah.
entitled.
Yeah.
She's entitled and complacent. And this is the clincher. Among the many, many things that the treasurer oversees is both the pension retirement fund and the retirement board. The retirement board, since COVID, doesn't even have Zoom meetings. They telephone. So people who are going to get their retirement benefits, retiring state employees, don't even have the courtesy of an in-person meeting or being able to see their interlocutors face to face. That's just shocking to me, the lack of respect. And then we also know that Department of Correction workers are not getting credit for hazardous conditions. So where they thought they were going to get 80% of their salary in pensions, they're only getting 50%. Well, we have a pension problem. We've got a $33 billion pension gap, but we don't solve that pension
Elizabeth,
problem.
we're against a hard break.
Okay.
Can we pause if you want?
Yes.
If you can stay for the break, right, and finish
I
the thought
can
here.
stay.
Yeah.
I can stay. Let's finish. It's really
All
important
right,
people know what's going on.
Absolutely. Let me do my housekeeping stuff here, folks. This is the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here in Radio Central AM 830 WCR, and reminding you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And Elizabeth Dion, who is a Republican candidate for the treasurer's position here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Stick with us. We will be back on the other side, folks.
Those things we most cherish are all put at risk through the improper disposal of mercury in everyday items. Fluorescent lamps, thermometers, thermostats all contain mercury. Mercury Recovery Program is designed to assist your community in the safe disposal of this heavy metal. For more information about where to dispose of these products, contact your local Board of Health, Department of Public Works, or visit our website at keepmercuryfromrising.org. Working together, we can keep our environment safe.
Attention all contractors. The Massachusetts Mercury Management Act makes it illegal to improperly dispose of old thermostats in the trash. They contain mercury that can be harmful to human health and the environment. Building and HVAC contractors, plumbers, and electricians, please properly dispose of all mercury thermostats. Contact your local health or public works department for information on where to safely dispose of thermostats in your community. Visit online, keepmercuryfromrising.org for details. Brought to you by Win Waste Innovations. Performance for the planet.
Polar Park is the place to play. It's still the best ballpark in AAA. Unibank fireworks every Friday. Sunset catches every Saturday. And kids run the bases every Sunday. Visit WooSox.com or call 508-500-8888 and get your tickets today. Polar Park is the place to play. It's still the best ballpark in AAA.
In a world as crazy as ours, isn't it nice to know there's one place you can visit for hours at a time to get a dose of reality, to find out how the other half is doing? Welcome to the radio home of Howie Carr. That's me. Visit anytime between 3 and 7 p.m. weekdays.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the second hour on the Sunday edition, the Independence Weekend edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN Radio Central, from the center of your dial, the center of information in the center of New England, AM 830 WCRN. And you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Russ is behind the glass flying the board back at HQ. And of course, our text line is up and running at 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. You can text that like you would anyone. It appears on the screen here in the studio in real time. And we'll try to work it into the conversation. And in the virtual studio with me, joining me, is Elizabeth Dion, who is the Republican candidate for the state treasurer's position, which, as we're learning, is a very powerful position. fourth after the governor, lieutenant governor, speaker. They control about 20% of the dinero here. And Elizabeth has some very strong ideas as to what needs to be done and what she's going to do in that position. And Elizabeth, if you can set up what your point was going into the break and finish your thought for everybody.
So as you were saying, the treasurer's position is extremely powerful. It's a portfolio of 12 departments, and one of those is the state retirement board. And the incumbent has made sure that her own pension is secure. When she was on the select board in Brookline, she voted that her Brookline stipend as a select board would count toward her total years worked for a pension. So she's making
that's not
220.
self-serving.
No, not at all. Not at all. So she's making $229,000 a year. She lives in the state about 2/3 of the year. The rest of the time, she's in her third home in Palm Beach, Florida. But the frontline state retiree makes only about $43,000 a year in pension. It's no frontline workers getting rich on this. So she's secured her own full pension, but the Pension Retirement Board is turning down full pensions for Department of Correction workers because they're not giving them full credit for hazardous conditions. Last time I checked, pretty hazardous to work in a prison. And frankly, they have a shorter lifespan. We have made these promises. These promises are sacred. We need to keep these promises. So I've been hearing from a number of Department of Correction employees who've gone up for retirement that not only are they not getting full retirement funds, but they're not receiving those funds for anywhere from 4 to 6 months after they retire. So it's a real financial hardship. So here we have an entitled, wealthy woman who is perfectly happy, and I think it's because she has an anti-law enforcement bias, to turn down full pay that has been promised to these lifetime workers who've been helping keep our communities safe. So it's just shocking. It's completely wrong.
Wow.
And as we do need pension reform, but the pension reform that we need are the $300,000 pensions that are being taken by UMass retirees. So we need to look at capping the same way that Social Security does, capping the maximum payout. That's pension reform. We don't reform pension on the backs of the lowest paid frontline workers. That's just wrong.
Wow. I did not know what was going on with the correctional workers, but to say they have hazardous pay, that's putting it mildly. These guys have, and women have very dangerous working conditions there as well. What do you think is the biggest point or issue to draw why you're a better choice over Goldberg? And obviously, we will extend an invitation for her to join us because there is the fair time doctrine and all that. Chances are she won't accept it, Elizabeth, but she may. I never know. Sometimes they do come on, but you're talking to the voter right now, and they can go into that booth. And I know a lot of people in Massachusetts are conditioned for that, just to do the Democrat and go full down ballot. But what should they remember? What should they be thinking about when they walk in that booth and they see Elizabeth Dion and they see Goldberg? What do you want them to think?
Well, let me back up and say, first of all, we've challenged her to debates, and she's completely ghosted us.
Really?
So we very much want her to debate us, very much want to give her an opportunity to challenge some of these things that I'm claiming about her and about her 3 terms.
And she has no desire to address them.
The major difference between
No desire to address them,
major difference between
Elizabeth. She feels she doesn't have to.
She's entitled. She thinks that she's been in for 3 terms, and the voters are just going to check the D, and she'll be in for a 4th term. So I really feel that voters need to send a message. The major differences between us, ironically, we have very similar backgrounds. We're both attorneys who've served on select boards, but there the backgrounds end. I did not grow up privileged.
Yeah.
I'm the 5th of 10 children. I grew up privileged with love and guidance from my wonderful parents and my wonderful siblings. But I started working when I was 13. I know the value of a dollar. I know what it is to have a family budget that is tight. And that
How
does not
long
allow
is
room
the
for
treasurer's term?
luxuries.
How many years?
So it's 4 years, The treasurer's term used to be limited to two-year terms by the state constitution. And then when Bob Crane came in promising patronage, the legislature took away, well, the constitution was amended to take away any term. So now they are 4-year terms, endless. I actually think the treasurer is too powerful. It's too much money. I am committing to run for only 2 terms. I think 2 terms is the maximum anyone should be in there, and typically has been. Since Bob Crane stepped down, Goldberg's an anomaly, and it's simply because no one's challenged her. The Republicans did not challenge her in 22. Her behavior got worse because she felt untouchable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, Elizabeth, I mean, good luck with all of this. Obviously, you've highlighted your decade plus of local budgeting success there and the ways you believe your track record with the Belmont Select Board Chair gives you an edge here in the current administration in managing the state finances responsibility. When it comes to the vision for Massachusetts, right? Everyday citizens worried about that affordability, housing cost, taxes. What's your big picture vision for the treasurer's office? How does it tie back to the values and integrity and service, I say, that your father instilled into you?
So, interesting fact that a lot of people don't know about me is that I was born, all 10 of my parents' children were born in California.
10.
And I'm the 5th of 10 children, as I
Did you
mentioned.
say 10?
10.
Okay.
All
So
10.
your parents
I'm
had
the
a
5th of
litter.
10. So as I said, I know the value of the dollar.
And you had to fight for food at the dinner table.
Yeah, and
you protected it.
we learned to eat quickly if we wanted seconds. But Dad served as the leader of the California Senate Republicans from 67 to 75. And for those who know their political history, those are the same 8 years that Reagan served as governor. And Reagan was an extremely successful governor, but part of the reason that he was so successful is because Dad was pushing his legislative agenda, and the Republicans were the minority in the legislature. So I learned from the best that you need to work across the aisle. You've got to be bipartisan to have lasting solutions. So Dad was able to push Reagan's agenda through the California State Senate, and Reagan was so impressed with Dad that toward the end of Reagan's second term, when his lieutenant governor was implicated in Watergate, later cleared but needed to resign to clear his name, Reagan actually appointed Dad to fulfill the remainder of that term. So Dad is John Lorenharmer, Elizabeth Dion, my husband's name, so we have a family name, and it's Dion, rhymes with Celine Dion, or matches the same pronunciation. But so I learned from Dad. I literally was born a Reagan Republican because I was born in the middle of Dad's two terms as senator.
Nope. All right, guys. There was just a clip. Let's see. There was just a little. Let me see if you come back. Are you there? You dumped out for a second. Do we still have audio?
Can you hear me?
There you go. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I think it was your end.
I'm here. I'm sorry about.
No problem.
I think it is my end, and I really apologize. Don't typically have trouble like this, but it's been dodgy all morning. So I was just saying, I learned from Dad, and frankly from from Dad from Reagan through Dad, to work across the aisle, to be common sense, to look for solutions that genuinely benefit the citizens that we serve. At the end of the day, people matter more than parties.
Yeah.
So I am a staunch fiscal conservative. I believe in responsible fiscal management, but I also believe in free peoples, free markets, and that government is best, which governs best, which serves the people.
Got it. It's going to be interesting. Elizabeth, I think you make a very good point about the dynamics of the governor's office and the treasurer's office, because we've seen that game played.
They're linked.
And they're linked, and the legislature being a one-party control will shift that power as needed to preserve the status quo that we have. Yeah. So, I get that. You endorse Mike Minot. I would like to have him on the show. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him yet and so forth, but from everything I've heard about him and friends who went to the convention and all of that, he's quite a force. And it would be interesting.
Well, what people need to know about Minogue, we are 50th in the nation for job creation. We're 50th in the nation for economic development. The Healy administration is trying to blame that on the national administration, but it's our fault. 49 other states have figured this out. Mike built a $17 billion company. He does not come from wealth. He built it himself, and he created jobs. Their manufacturing facility was in Danvers. So Mike understands economic development.
Yeah. And the challenges that to run, especially a manufacturing business in the Commonwealth. I mean, farming is tough, manufacturing stuff. Service businesses, not as tough as those things, but still the regulations and the tax situation stuff is really, really tough in here. Well, Elizabeth, I mean, good luck to you. And thank you for joining me this morning. Do you have 4th of July plans today, or are you doing this all day, campaigning?
I'm actually going to church after this. My husband and I do go to church on Sundays.
Okay.
Yesterday, we marched in the Plymouth Parade, which was an amazing experience. And then we hosted a barbecue last night. And then this afternoon, in Belmont, this afternoon, we'll have some scarce family time, which is really important to preserve if and when we can. But yeah, hitting the campaign trail hard. I'm not leaving the state really until November 3rd.
You're shooting down to your Palm Beach home?
I will be in the state full time as hopefully the next taxpayer's treasurer.
You're not headed out to the island compound?
Sure don't have one.
No? Are you sure you qualified for the office? I thought you needed to have these things.
Home.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much.
Don't have a house on Cape Cod.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Really appreciate it.
Yeah. A nice time at church. Thank you so much for joining us, Elizabeth. We'll have you back before the campaign.
Happy Independence Day.
Thank you. All right. And we'll have you back before Election Day for sure.
Would love to come back. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. All right, folks. That was Elizabeth Dion. She is the Republican candidate for the state treasurer's position here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We got to get a little bit background her, learn where she's coming from. It certainly sounds like we would go from a part-time treasurer to a full-time treasurer. That would be a nice switch. All right, folks, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. It's 508-871-7000. Let me bring into the conversation Matthew J. from Philadelphia. Happy Independence Day. Happy 250th, Matthew J. How are you celebrating this weekend?
I'm doing fine, Joe. I just wanted to make sure my audio was okay, that you're receiving me.
Yeah, we can hear you fine. We got you. For those watching us on our stream, you can see both of us here, and you got decent audio. So we're good.
Wonderful.
Marvelous.
Joe, I went to a neighbor's barbecue last night and had a good time. A few burgers and some macaroni salad. And they have this giant pool. And I looked at it. They said, "Oh, you want to go in?" My wife went in, and I said, "That looks like a lot of work to maintain." They got the nets out, and there's some bugs getting in, and the filters. It looks great, but I don't want to do all the maintenance. But it was a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. A pool is like a boat or plane. You got to find friends that have them. Because they're, I've never had a pool like in the private house, but I'm in condo living, so we have all of that. It's like living in a hotel. You got the pool and the gym and the library and the game room and the theater, and all that is in the condo development. But we certainly, it's reflected in our condo fees. Trust me on that one. But I found as a boat owner, everybody loves to enjoy your boat, but nobody's there when you're going to fill it up with gas or clean it, right? They have a heck of a time on the lake. You get back, your boat is trashed. You went through it's just, have friends that have those things, because they are difficult and they are hard to maintain, costly to maintain, And again, the plane, I had a share of a plane for years, but I liked it better when my good friends kept their plane at Norwood and I was able to use it. We'd go down for lunch to Nantucket for lunch or something, Nantucket. We'd go to Nantucket or maybe Martha's Vineyard. But you fly in, you have lunch, you fly back, and you don't have to take care of any of the maintenance of the airplane. That's good stuff.
So, Joe, you have a pilot's license?
Yeah, I'm not current, but yeah.
You got single engine, twin engine?
Single engine via visual flight. I never went for multi-engine. Just never happened in the course. But yeah, so single engine and visual.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. But again, you have friends. I mean, there's a Baron 6 there. So if you have friends that have the twin, you get to go up and so forth. I had a friend who had a Cessna, I think it's the 310 turboprop twin engines at Hanscom. And that was always, I'd taken some flights in that plane. But I spent 2 years, Matthew J., in the Air Force Auxiliary doing the DEA flights. So I used to take out of Hanscom, and we would do grid search. Now you got to remember, this is in the late 80s, and the marijuana was still an issue, right? Fast forward to 40 years, and it's a different scene. But back in the 80s, marijuana or the hemp plant was still considered, major contraband, and there was an agreement between the Air Force Auxiliary and the DEA and Customs. We didn't really need to do custom flights in Massachusetts, but we did a lot of DEA flights. So for 2 years, I would take flights out of Hanscom and be assigned a grid, and we would do the grid searches looking for the hemp plant. And I got to tell you something, hemp has a very distinctive green hue from the air. And the first year that I was involved with those DEA flights, we kind of sucked. And the DA was like, hey guys, thank you. You really did a good effort. Second year, they were like, wow, you guys did a really good job, because once you do it and you can really pick that green hue out from miles away. And then you'd see the paths, the footpaths, because they'd have to go out to maintain it. And there were a lot of pod plants guys in Western Massachusetts back in the 80s. If you didn't know that, there really was actually. So the second year I did it, we had a lot of success in finding this out. And of course, if I knew then what I know now, right? I mean, cell phones weren't huge yet. They existed, but you could have called your buddy and said, hey, you got about 4 hours to get out there and grab what you can. But no, it was quite an experience and got a lot of hours.
Joe, a friend of mine, this is going back to the 80s, actually. He lived in Providence, Rhode Island. And I remember him telling me about, in order to get his pilot's license, he had to accumulate these flight hours, and that he did this through the Civil Air Patrol.
Yeah.
And that's a very important thing to do before, I guess, I don't know all the testing background, but he was going on and on about that.
Civil Air Patrol was founded, believe it or not, December 1st, 1941, 6 days before Pearl Harbor. And it was a series of civilian flight groups, and it goes back to LaGuardia and like all these people after World War I were trying to make the point, because up until then it was always whoever had the biggest navy controlled the planet, right? And that's why England, Britain, because they had the biggest, as we were talking about in a revolution, right? Our colonialists, our farmers and stuff, went against the most powerful military at the time on the planet, the English Navy. And that mentality stayed with us for hundreds of years, because that's the way it was, right? If you had the ships, you had the Navy, you could go anywhere on the globe. Well, we had certain people, whether it was Billy Mitchell and these guys who sang in LaGuardia and saying, look, we got to look at, after World War I, this plane thing. We weren't big into aviation. And when we got to World War II, we as a country, we weren't anywhere near both our allies and the Axis. In Germany, was so far ahead. But this thing got together, and then they said, you know what, we're going to do away with all these little organizations. We're going to call it Civil Air Patrol. Then they designated the United States Air Force Auxiliary, and you have this mission. It's non-combative missions of the Air Force. And in the 80s, they entered into an agreement with the Customs and DEA for those things. But, whether it was Billy Mitchell taking a single engine prop plane and dropping a bag of flour on the roof of a munitions plant in North Carolina to make a point. Now, he went from general to colonel. They demoted him because he did this. But the point was made that we needed air superiority as well as naval superiority. And once we entered World War II, we were very far behind, but by the end of the war, we had caught up. And naturally, after World War II, civilian aviation started to take off, meaning traveling by aircraft instead of cruises and so forth. But the history of that is so fascinating, how it came to be, and then what the missions of it were, and then they have the cadet program, and then you can be commissioned in, to the senior program. I actually joined Civil Air Patrol when I was 12 because I had committed. You have to either finish the 6th grade or be 13. So I actually got into it because of a neighbor of mine, and you have to take flights, orientation flights, as a cadet. And I got the bug, so
yeah.
I finagled the bagel, if you will. And what I did is I became a communications officer. Funny that would have been, right? I went in communications and ended up in radio. But the point is, from there, it got what's called the observer rating, which meant I got qualified to be, when we were up on a search and rescue mission, PIC, pilot in command, right-hand seat, to be the observer and the communicator. And every time there was a mission, I got on, and I always tried to make sure, whether it was a mock mission for training or an actual search mission for what's called an emergency locator transmitter, or on a boat, it's called an LPERB. And these are beacons that will send a signal out at 121.5 megahertz, international distress frequency. All commercial airliners are tuned to it. All aircraft towers are tuned to it. That thing goes off. A whole series of events happen. Satellite, Maxwell Air Force Base, they activate United States Force Auxiliary, meaning Civil Air Patrol, in that state, which we call a wing, and you have to go look for it. I always made sure that I got in the right-hand seat, but the pilot in command was also a certified flight instructor. Because after the 3 or 4 hours of that search, or sometimes you'd land, go up, and it would be 9 hours that you'd fly in a day, I'd take my logbook out, Matthew, and say, "Hey, will you sign my book? Right? You were the certified flight instructor while I was up with you." And that's how I got so many hours, was making sure that the guy who happened to be flying was also a flight instructor. And then you could always, we had a fleet at that time. I think in the 80s, we had 11 planes in Massachusetts tied down at various airports, right? And yeah, I mean, once you were in and you were an officer, you could just sign the plane out.
Joe, listen, you have an extensive, you know all about the history of the Civil Air Patrol. And as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, you said 1941. So during World War II, when we had the U-boats coming off the U.S. East Coast, a role of the Civil Air Patrol would be to go out to sea a little bit and see if they could find, was that a role of the Civil Air Patrol?
Yeah. Yeah, Civil Air Patrol has credited with many U-boat sightings and off the coast of Maine, and I don't think a lot of people know this, Matthew J. The Nazis, or the Germans, were using Maine as the infiltration point for the country. So they'd drop off their spies and their operatives from submarines off the coast of Maine or even Massachusetts. So there were a lot of sightings and a lot of stuff credited. And back in those days, they were doing the blackouts, and you'd have I forget what they would call it, the guy who would walk the street to make sure you were blacked out, right? You'd have to have blackout curtains and so forth. So they'd be doing that, but would also have watch. And there's some of these watchtowers in Massachusetts still exist on the coast. You can see where they were used during World War II. But yes, there would be normal flights that the Civil Air Patrol would go up and again fly the coastal line looking for enemy boats, and you could, as long as the sub wasn't too deep. Just like it's amazing. The first time I ever flew over the coast of Massachusetts and could look down, Matthew, and see sharks swimming in the water, underwater, but you could clearly see them, and they would be so close to the swimmers on the beaches that they were totally unaware that there were, in fact, sharks right off the coast. But you could also see U-boats if they weren't too deep. So if they were just submerged, you could actually see them. But yeah, they got a lot of credit for that.
Joe, one of the things when you're mentioning, I know we're coming up on the break there, is going out to see the Civil Air Patrol. And I think to myself, once you're out over the ocean, how it's potentially you could be disoriented at some point because you don't have the traditional markers or landmarks you may use when you're flying over cities. And we saw that, I guess, with JFK Jr.
Yep.
Maybe he became disoriented when he didn't have that. I just think there's a lot of things out there.
And he made the mistake of running against Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Yeah. On that note, Matthew, it's you got to trust your instruments. And it is easy to get disoriented. So you have to look at your horizon. And I don't mean the horizon out the plane. You got to look at your horizon. You got to look at your instruments. You got to look at your altimeter rather. You've got to trust the instruments because they're instruments. They're not lying. They are what they are. So, you got to learn to do that. But yeah, most pilots will do dead reckoning, and you use visual, and during the day, you're in the clear skies, where you are, everything's good. But for those cases or those instances where there's heavy cloud cover or it's nighttime or there's bad weather, pay attention to the instruments, trust them. And yeah, John F. Kennedy Jr. Had a tough flight, and it's assumed he was disoriented. And at one point, they might even thought he was upside down. But I don't know if there was ever an official determination. Last thing I ever read on it was obviously several years ago, and it was a little vague. But we're against the clock. We got to take our 11 o'clock break, bring us into the third and final hour. Matthew J., you sticking around on the Independence for a little bit?
Yes.
All right, folks. Stick with us. We'll be back on the other side. Don't go away, man.
Headline news, weather, and local information. 830 WCRN.
News, I'm Paul Stevens. President Trump speaking during America 250 celebrations at the National Mall in D.C. last night.
For a quarter of a millennium, liberty, justice, equality, self-government, and unmatched prosperity have flourished here as they have never flourished anywhere before. There is nothing like what we are doing.
The event delayed for a time due to thunderstorms. Meantime, Vice President J.D. Vance in New York City yesterday for America 250.
It is a very American thing to ring in 250 years of American history by parading our naval and air force might for the world to see. But I can't help but consider that 250 years ago, the waters of New York Harbor looked very, very different.
He spoke during New York City's Sail Forth 250 parade. America's listening to Fox News.
Are you having trouble hearing? Hearing loss can devastate the quality of your life. Now, there's an affordable fix for you or your loved one. Rated the best hearing aids of 2026 by Forbes Health, Audion Hearing has the highest quality hearing aids at the lowest prices, starting at just $98 a pair.
I actually like them better than my old $5,000 hearing aid.
I could not believe how my hearing and life changed.
Join over 1 million happy customers by going to audionhearing.com. That's AUDIEN hearing.com.
And the match is about to begin.
Most of the team is out with COVID-19, so there'll be some substitutes tonight.
What's this? We have an unexpected guest on the field.
It's a dog, but they could do with extra players.
She's going for the ball.
Are front paws hands or feet?
Soccer season is full of surprises, and COVID-19 could be one of them. If you test positive, prescription medications may help. Ask your doctor if they're right for you. Learn more at PfizerForAll.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
All right, folks, welcome back to the third and final hour of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Of course, it is the 4th of July Independence Weekend show, and I hope that you're enjoying this holiday weekend, remembering the reason that we have this as a holiday. And I do have to remind you, folks, that this hour is sponsored in part by Heart to Home Meals, delicious, ready-to-eat meals for seniors delivered free with no subscription required. And guys, I've used the service. It's not restricted for seniors, although I guess technically Tuesday I become a senior. Birthday, Matthew J, is Tuesday the 7th. But don't forget, Heart to Home Mails. Check them out. Over like 150 items on there. And I have used this. I shouldn't say I have. I used this service. And they bring you the mails. They put them in your freezer. They rotate it around. And they are very good. And they're very easy to prep. And if you're a busy guy or a busy family, it's a very good option to have. But also, if you are a senior, right, or you have maybe your parents or senior in your life, work this out with them. Some of this is actually covered by some of the Medicare, I think, and insurance. So they're out of Marlboro, but they deliver all over, and they've got warehouses. So check it out, Heart to Home Meals. All right, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation, and our text line is up and running at 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. Text that number like you would anyone else. It appears on the screen here in the studio in real time. And don't forget, we are streaming. I always stream my shows not only to the station's Facebook page, but to my social media accounts at Joe Mangiacotti Show, and that's Facebook, X account, Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile. Yes, Instagram now. We are streaming live on Instagram as well as YouTube and Rumble. So lots of ways to watch and a lot of ways to listen. You can always go back and get past shows on any of those platforms. And this is turned into a podcast. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, like Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You know the drill there. In virtual studio with me, Matthew J. from Philadelphia. Thanks for taking time. I let everyone know earlier, you will be sitting in for me all 3 hours next Sunday, because it's going to be a busy weekend for me next Sunday. There's the birthday celebration, but also I'm tying the knot on July 11th. So we're getting married next weekend. Next week, less than a week. Yes, that's crazy. This is something we talked about 3 years ago, and then it was always going to be down the road. And then we thought, well, we'll do a spring wedding in 27, and then decided, we already have friends and family gathering. Why don't we just do it? So, yeah, it will be, I'll be, next time I appear on air, I will be a married man. Woo.
Great.
Yeah, that's a little intimidating. That's a little nerve-wracking. So, Philadelphia, God, you guys have such history. I was talking about history here in Boston, the Boston Tea Party and the Sons of Liberty. The Tea Party was basically a Masonic meeting that went rogue, and all the brothers went down to the harbor. But it was about power. It wasn't just about the taxation. It was about no representation. It was about the tyranny that they were experiencing and how the colonists were being treated, although they were so proud to be British citizens or subjects, as the case may be. And so a lot here, we have a very deep history here with Paul Revere, Lexington Green, but a lot of stuff happened in Philly, man. A lot of stuff happened. A few things happened. There were some things signed, and
Joe, I was at this place at Doylestown. It's outside of Philadelphia, but they had their whole Revolutionary War set up, and I really didn't know, and this is terrible to say, the role of loyalists, the people that were loyal to the crown, that were helping the British troops out. And the more I was there at this museum, the more mad I got. But yes, there's a significant role there. I'm certainly, as you know, all the way down from, the East Coast back then. But loyalists played a big role.
Yeah. Yeah, because one of our faithful callers, when I opened up this morning, called in, and one of the points that he was making is less than a third of colonists wanted this. And even among the third that wanted this, they didn't want full secession and full independence. They just wanted to revise the relationship with the monarch. Yep. They wanted a little more. They thought that we, the colonists, should have some voice in Parliament, which would have been a month or so boat journey, right? Which is why I was always impressed with Benjamin Franklin, because he used to go back. He used to spend a lot of time in France. He loved Paris, and he was very instrumental in getting France on board. But the point is, he traveled many times, in every journey in those days in the 1700s, crossing the Atlantic Ocean. That was a roll of the dice, man.
Oh, yeah.
You made it to the other side. So that aside, it wasn't the entire populace who said, well, we got to do this. It was a handful who said, we really need to have it. And what my opening monologue, I don't know if you were listening earlier, I was pointing out that this wasn't symbolic. These men put their lives and their fortune and their honor and their families' well-being on the line. And many of these men ended up arrested. And the Brits had off our coast the prison ships. And if you were taken to or sentenced to a prison ship that was anchored off our coast, or what's now our coast, it was almost akin to a death sentence. You weren't, if you did get off that boat, you weren't getting off as a healthy human being.
I hear you. Joe, how about the role of mercenaries in the conflict? You hear a lot about that. I have to mention Valley Forge. I don't know if I mentioned in your program before, because I live about 20 minutes away from it. And in my previous life as a transit official, I did a lot we had routes that went through Valley Forge Park. And when I did go there, I'd always stop at George Washington's house and just sit there and just soak in the history of the country and what happened there in that brutal winter. And you think about it, Joe, when I look at the numbers at Valley Forge, 2,000 or 3,000 dead, most didn't have shoes, food, disease was rampant. I mean, that could really break morale. The fact that they stayed together and fight another day was really a tremendous thing. And of course, we are all grateful for that.
Yeah. And you got to attribute the father of our country, because a lot of these men were following the general, right? They believed in the cause, but they were following George Washington. They believed in him as their commander. And I mean, imagine that weight and that responsibility of that. I mean, there are some good documentaries and some good shows out there. One's Washington, because the other thing that, and a lot of people don't know about the spy ring, America's first spy ring. Yeah. Washington had created this thing, and it was numbers. There was no code names. People had numbers, and he would identify his spies, but he would take average citizens that were farmers or merchants and turn them into what we would call assets today. And when New York was occupied by the Brits, he had to turn to the farmers, and most of these farmers were, say, selling their goods on the black market, right? They had to go into the harbor under the cloak of darkness to avoid the Brits getting them. And since they were already doing this, Washington thought, let them bring back some intelligence, including things on the mercenaries, the Germans and Dutch and so forth that were doing that. And here are the real numbers. This is how Washington knew the ships and the numbers in areas, and why he made some decisions were because of the secret spy ring, the culprit, right? He named it after the county that he was a surveyor in. And we didn't know about it, I think, until 1912 or somewhere in the early 1900s, in a trunk in the attic of a Long Island house. There it was, George Washington's ledgers in his book.
Amazing.
It was so amazing, the Culpeper spy ring, and that's a part of history I don't think gets the attention. But let's pause for a minute. 508-871-7000. Elaine from Framingham has been waiting patiently. Elaine, welcome to the conversation. Matthew J's on as well. Happy 4th of July and
Happy
Independence.
4th of July. I've been listening the past couple of weeks, but I'm just so busy with the baby. It's crazy. And congratulations, you're getting married next week. So that's
Thank
fun.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. And My niece got engaged on the 3rd down in Plymouth.
Oh, sweet.
Which was a lot of fun. She was totally surprised. We were all in on it. So it's been a blast, you know.
Yeah.
I love it. I tried last night to stay awake to watch the whole Washington D.C. thing, but I just couldn't. It just went waiting and waiting and waiting. Well,
say that again. There was an issue with my earpiece. What were you watching?
Oh, trying to stay awake to watch the Washington D.C. stuff last night.
Yeah.
I just gave up.
Yeah, I kept checking in and so forth, and of course, the music. Lee Greenwald singing he did his God Bless America, right? I'm proud to be an American, but he also did. Did he do the national anthem? Who did the national anthem last night?
You saw more than I did.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone can text or call in with that, but yeah, I mean, they actually the big state fair on the Washington Mall. The weather, right? The heat was so bad that they had people get off because they were passing out. Then the storms came in. So yeah, they had to deal with it. But I think it was 6 states said they weren't going to participate. And
someone from Massachusetts, she manned it herself.
Who did?
Spent like 13,000. A woman from Massachusetts. She manned the station herself. Was there 13 hours a day. To do it because it's embarrassing that we weren't there, and what are you going to do? You can't.
That is so petty. It's so petty, guys. And look at, I mean, is it Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania wasn't there either. Yeah.
Fetterman.
Yeah.
He's Pennsylvania?
Fetterman and
yes.
He's from Fetterman
the Republican and Fetterman, didn't they? They ended up getting sponsors and getting it done because your governor, Shapiro, said no.
Yes.
Right.
So
what's his name? McCormick? Is it McCormick?
Yes. McCormick. Dave McCormick.
Right? McCormick.
Yeah, Senator McCormick and Senator Fetterman got the companies together and got it manned for Pennsylvania because Shapiro said no. Again, what's up with your governor? What's up with my governor? What is wrong with these people?
So what are they going to do when Trump isn't there anymore?
Yes. Transfer.
Like they blame everything on him. What are
in
they going to do?
psychology, we have a very simple term called transference. So they are just going to transfer the Nazi, evil, incarnate fascist from Donald Trump to, take your pick, J.D. Vance, Mark Rubio, whoever it is. They've already started with Vance, right? You already see that transfer to Vance. Although I think I'm really liking Mark Rubio, guys. I mean, I liked him as senator, but I am loving him as Secretary of State, and I think he would be one heck of a president.
He's so transformed from how he was.
Little Marco, you mean?
How he's presenting. Yeah. It's just, but he's operating under Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And will he change if he's operating for himself? I don't know.
Well, I think I'm seeing in Matthew J. I don't know where you're on this. I watch Rubio, and he's very much the guy he was before as Senator Rubio. And remember, nothing changes. He's still the child of Cuban immigrants that came here for a better life. He's still attached to his roots. But when he talks about the role of the United States, and he talks about where we are in the world and what role we're supposed to be taking, I think that's a Rubio stand that happens to align with Donald J. Trump. But I think Rubio is his own man. And I think if he was to advance to the presidency, he would just be the guy we see right now. And I think what Trump has done, whether it's Rubio, Vance, and other conservatives and Republicans, not all, it has given the right kind of Republican the confidence to stand up and speak back and hit back where they didn't. The Republican Party, we were kind of known as just taking it because the Democrats would say these things and Republicans wouldn't fight back. Donald Trump has said not only is it okay to speak up and fight back, but you need to. and you got to be who you are and stick to that.
Joe, can you get a Rubio Vance ticket, or is that out of the question at this point?
Yeah, well, what would be interesting, would J.D. Vance be willing to be vice president for another 2 terms? Because with the ticket, I don't know, Elaine, should the ticket be Rubio or Rubio Vance?
It could be, but I don't know. I don't think that would happen. You know, well, what you were saying before, listen, about how the language is infused into the culture.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, all the terms that they use, right?
Yeah.
Instead of, you know,
Yeah, they
like
want to project.
illegal alien.
Yeah, right.
Project it. So
they project it
what
to
you're
us and
saying
force
with-
us to use their verbiage, which you don't have to do, guys.
And what
Freedom of
what
speech
you're
means
saying is-
you're not compelled to use language you don't want to use, too. It works both ways.
And with Trump giving them a platform to kind of fight back, is what you're saying, them being able to stand on their own and not taking it. It would be nice then if the language gets infused back and changed, because so much of it, you know, even when you watch HGTV, it can't be the master bedroom anymore. It could be the main suite. Like,
Yeah, or
and then
the
people start
primary.
saying it.
Yeah.
The primary. You're right. It gets confused, and then that's what people say. But if your point you're saying is that Trump is going to allow Republicans to be able to actually stand up and not take it, you know, it would come all the way back down to the language too, and trying to change the terms that they use.
Yeah, it is very Orwellian, right? It's you control the language, you control the thought, and then, you know, the left has been trying to soften the line between a migrant and an illegal alien. They want us to use the same term, right? Even other terms, dreamers and all this stuff, because then you're not quite sure what that is, which is why I've always been adamant that, look, in the statute, right, it refers to people here who come in unauthorized, not through the 147 points of entry. Those are illegal aliens. That is the statute. That is the legal term. And we're told you can't say that anymore. Well, says who? What do you mean I can't? Of course I can say it, but they don't want you to say it. They want to control how you speak, and they want that line to be blurred. So migrants, everybody, you know, we're a country of immigrants. Well, yeah, of course, unless you are a Native American and you were born on this land, of course you're a migrant. We all migrated here from somewhere else. But there's a difference between those that did it legally and those who did it not legally. And there are pathways. And that's the whole point here. And so don't pretend that they are the same thing. They aren't the same thing. And now within that subculture of the illegals, Elaine, right? I mean, you've got the people who are basically coming here not to do good things, not to pursue the American dream, not to assimilate into our country, but they are either agents of our cartel, or they're dealed with the coyotes, or they're fleeing, or whatever it is. That's a big difference. And where's that distinction? And when we look at the ICE getting protested, and I was having this conversation last night, actually, with my fiance, strangely enough, was that what I find to be very interesting is the left that protest, or these activists who protest ICE. Why is ICE out in the streets going after? It's because the same states that put this sanctuary city in, which, by the way, I'm going to say it again, is not a thing. There's no mechanism that you get to pick and choose what federal laws you follow. Wouldn't that be sweet, right? So there's no such thing as a sanctuary state, except for what is in your head. You make that term up and you pretend it means something. And sure, there's a practical part of it, because you've got the Democratic Senate governors and even local government telling the police don't cooperate. Well, they can do that. It's wrong. But the fact that they became sanctuary states and told them not to cooperate, because the way it used to be before Trump was president, and they're doing this only because, I could play some clips of Barack Obama talking about all the illegals and they have to get out of here, including Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. We can talk about the history. They laid the groundwork. But the whole point is that ICE would not be in the streets if they continued to cooperate, because it used to be that they would have an illegal in the courtroom, and the sheriff's department or the police or the DA would call ICE and say, hey, you know, an illegal is getting sentenced, or we're going to release an illegal in 4 days. They'd say, all right, here's a detainer owner. And they would come and they would do a very peaceful custody transfer at a courthouse and or at a jail and take that person in. And when they stopped cooperating with ICE, I said, well, yeah, that doesn't mean we go away. You can't tell a federal agency we can't do our job. So ICE had to start waiting outside of courtrooms, had to start going into the streets, had to go to workplaces, find where they were living. That's why ICE is in the way that we see it today. So they're protesting ICE being on the street, but they're on the street because the same people who stopped the corporation caused ICE to have to take other types of methods. In that, and here again, the irony, guys, right? Because now ICE is in situations and they're going after because they have somebody with a bad criminal history and they want to get that person in custody and get them out of the country. But when they have to go to their workplace or go to where they live, guess who else is there? Other illegals who may have never, they illegally entered the country, but then they've broken no other law. And they're keeping their head down and they're trying to build a better life, and they're doing it, sure, under the radar. But they're getting scooped up because ICE had to go look for the bad guys, and the bad guys are in the proximity of the, lack of a better term, the good illegals. And the good illegals are getting scooped up because ICE had to go into the streets. They had to go into the workplaces. They have to, they're even now, as talking to people in New Jersey, they're going into workplaces or stores and places of business where they're known to have illegals working there, which they weren't doing before. So I just think you got to point it out. ICE is doing what they're doing because you stop cooperating with ICE.
And the laws are still existing and they're trying to enforce them. But, yeah. And then the other part, so when they say that they didn't break any laws, but they did. They did break laws. They broke into the country. It's like someone broke into your home. If they broke into your home, you can let them stay. Mm-hmm. You know, so yeah, you're right. They may be living peacefully and trying to, you know, have a better life. They still did break the law. You know, no matter how you look at it, you know, they did break the law. And I'm sorry, you know, it's like, I know people, my niece's husband, you know, he spent $40,000 to become a citizen, you know. So like, what about all those people that are trying to do it the right way? So it's frustrating, you know, because I know some of them are here. And
I've gone through this. My fiance is not American born, right? My fiance is another country, but we had to switch visas, right, to go to the, I'm dealing with it. We've dealt with it to keep it all legal and everything, but it's very expensive. Because I don't recommend, I'm not going to try to do it myself. We've you know, we secured an immigration lawyer, a very good one, very good, and legalese equals very expensive, by the way. So when you have a very good lawyer, it's a very expensive lawyer. But and there's fees at every step that we have to pay, right, for the visas and State Department, and then there's the National Visa Registry, and you got to have an account there. So there's a lot involved with this, and I've learned it and still learning it firsthand, because decided to marry, or not decided to marry, fell in love with and is going to marry someone who happens to not be an American citizen. So yes, it's a long process and it's an expensive process, but you got to do it because that's the way it's supposed to be done.
Law, and if they don't like the laws, then change them. Although excuse me, because if they do get control, they are gonna abolish like the
it'll be open border, right? If the Democrats take the Oval again, it's going to be open borders. ICE is going to be, you know, and it depends. Do the Republican lose Congress? Do they lose one chamber and not the other chamber? Do they lose both chambers? You know, this is scary as to what could happen. they've told us what they're going to do, right, Matthew J? They're going to make Washington and Puerto Rico a state. They're going to pack the court. They're going to go to 13. They are going to talk about preserving democracy. Everything on their plan is to absolutely mock democracy, mock the founding fathers, mock the way that the country is set up, and will want to try to get rid of the Electoral College and go to popular vote, which is scary.
Yes, it is.
It really is.
Sorry.
Say again, Matthew J.
If I'm hoping this doesn't happen, Joe. I think we talked about it last week, that places like New York City with run by the radical mayor, that there will be a showdown between ICE, Border Patrol, NYPD, not just there, but maybe Chicago, maybe even here in Philadelphia. It is a big concern. I hope it doesn't happen, Joe, but it seems to be sitting out there because the rhetoric emanating from all these Democrats is non-cooperation. We don't acknowledge federal law. We don't acknowledge anything.
Yeah.
But you wonder, how far will they go? How far will they go? And how far will the Trump administration go in enforcing and saying, no, we're going to put our foot down? It's going to be interesting to see. I just hope it doesn't turn into
we've got the
wild
bulldog right in charge. You got Tom Homan, which I just looking at him intimidates me. He's a very intimidating guy. But Elaine, thank you for the call. I got to let you go because we're coming up on the break. Enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend. Thank you so much for listening. I know you listen all the time. You can't always call, but I appreciate it, Elaine. Thank you so much. Matthew J., hold on. We're going to take our mid-hour break here in the 11 o'clock hour, and we'll come back for the final segment. But I want everybody to know that the Joe Mangiacotti Show is sponsored in part by Heart to Home Meals, delicious, ready-to-eat meals for seniors, delivered free with no subscription. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, listen to our commercials. We'll be back on the other side.
Boston, are you ready for a show that's unique and different? Blind and Beyond Radio Show is the only commercial radio show in the world for the visually impaired and the blind community. We are the bridge between the blind community and the sighted community. This show is sponsored by Carroll Center for the Blind in Newton, Mass. Fun, informative, educational, with trivia prizes every Sunday night. Blind and Beyond Radio Show every Sunday night, 7 to 9 p.m. on WCRN 830 a.m.
Folks, life is too short to drink bad coffee. If you love coffee the way I do, then you need to try Gatan Farms coffee. That is premium Guatemalan coffee, grown in fertile volcanic soil, the mountains of Guatemala, the kind of environment that produces deep, rich, smooth flavor. Serious coffee drinkers appreciate. Visit GatanFarms.com, or even easier for WCRN listeners, go to bestcupofjoe.com. That's bestcupofjoe.com. Gatan Farms coffee, from the volcanic highlands of Guatemala to your cup. Taste the difference.
Looking for a station that brings you all sides of the story? Tune in to 50,000 watt powerhouse WCRN, where the left and the right meet in the middle. Whether you lean left, lean right, or just want to stay informed, WCRN has you covered with diverse voices, lively debates, and thought-provoking discussions. From politics and health to pop culture, you'll hear it all right here. Radio Central, where opinions from both sides come together for the conversations that matter. From the center of the dial, the center of New England, and the center of information, AM 830, WCRN, Radio Central.
Learn how you can make your retirement exactly what you want it to be. Join attorney Jeff Monfett for Retirement Security every Monday and Friday afternoon at 2. Set the stage for a worry-free retirement with Retirement Security right here on Full Service Radio, AM 830 WCRN.
All right, folks, welcome back for the final segment, second half of the third hour, reminding you that the Joe Mangiacotti Show is sponsored by Heart to Home Meals, delicious, ready-to-eat hot meals for seniors delivered with no subscription. So a little bit of background on that. And this is really a smart service, folks, for seniors and for families that want peace of mind when it comes to mealtime. Heart to Home Meals offers a big menu. I told you this before. It's like over 150 chef-prepared, ready-to-eat meals, frozen meals, designed with seniors in mind, but they're for anybody. You order what you want when you want it. And here's what I love about the way they do business, guys. There is no subscription, no minimum on the orders, right? No hidden fees. It is what it is. And they don't on checkout or boom, boom, boom. No. That's what it is. No hidden fees. You keep the meals in your freezer, heat them up in minutes when you're ready to eat. And delivery, always free. Brought right to you, to your door by local drivers. And I've talked to them about this. They keep the drivers in the same routes, the same house, so that those drivers get to know the customers. They get to know you, and you get to know them, and they become more than just a delivery driver to you. So if you want to make mealtime easier, or if you're looking for a thoughtful way to help a parent or loved one, take a look at Heart to Home Meals. We're glad to have them supporting the 11 o'clock hour right here on AM 830 WCRN. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Lines are open and available. Russ is behind the glass flying the board back at HQ as I broadcast from the Cameo studios, and the Cameo cam is on, which means we're streaming to multiple platforms, whether you want to watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, LinkedIn profile, Twitch. I don't know why, Matthew J. A lot of people watch Twitch TV. And when we first started streaming like this, somebody on my staff said, hey, Twitch TV. And I said, well, I thought that was just for gamers, right? Isn't that just the place? They said, no, we can do it. And I'm glad we do. We have a lot of people who watch us on Twitch. And about a month ago, we started streaming live to Instagram. And I like that. People love it. They tend to like watching it on Instagram. But the way that Instagram does it, once it stops the live feed, it goes into this archive thing there. It's not like a post. Like on Facebook, when the show ends, it just stays there as a post, and you can watch it anytime. So it's different. But anyway, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Happy Independence Weekend. Happy 250th, because, and I think, Matthew J., you're old enough like me to remember not just, I think I remember our bicentennial in 1976. And it was huge. The tall ships came to Boston. We did the reenactment up here, Matthew J., of Paul Revere's run, Lexington Green. The reenactment, that's the word I was looking for earlier. The reenactment of the battle at Lexington Green. And what's interesting in Lexington, for those that have been up there and you know it, and I don't know if you've ever been there, Matthew, is because of the historical district, if you own one of the houses that face the green, you're governed by the rules or the laws, I guess, of what color you can paint your house and all that. It has to be white, and then you can only have like black or green shutters. You can't change the aesthetics, right? You can't tear that down and put up a modern home. In other words, it pretty much, if you go to Lexington, you go to Lexington Green, it pretty much looks like it did in 1775 when Paul Revere rode, and looks like it did in 1776. They keep the aesthetics, so that's pretty cool. And I'm sure Philadelphia must have many of the similar things.
Oh, absolutely, Joe. And I'm looking forward to going up to Boston again. I've been there quite a few times, probably more through Logan. Back in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't direct service to Dublin from here in Philadelphia. So I would normally go Philadelphia, Logan, Shannon, or Dublin. But I've been in the city a few times. I have a lot of cousins that have moved over across the pond.
Every Irishman has a lot of cousins in Boston. That was ground zero for Ireland, right?
Well, here's the thing, Joe, and I hate to say this, but the few times I've been up to Boston, it usually ends up with the cousins in a local pub. So sometimes that erases the memory, and I'm trying to think, like, boy, was in Lexington? Was I in Concord? I'm trying to think back, like, if I was there. But
because once you get in those pubs, they all look the same on the inside.
Yes. Now, Joe, if I can say a few words about the bicentennial here in Philadelphia in 1976. And yes, I'm that old too. It was a great time, and I remember there were major festivities near Independence Hall, but there were also major festivities in Valley Forge. I mean, it was packed, people all around the country, all around the world, and it was a very festive time. And I think to myself, Joe, look how different our country is now in 2026. And many times, I mean, I was young man. I was like 11, 12 years old, 75. And I think about the changes that our country has undergone. And at that time, Joe, in the bicentennial, if you can remember, the Vietnam War was just coming to an end. It was traumatic. The Carter years, we had economic turmoil, and then we went into the Reagan years, and we fast forward, and we're here now in 2026 with our 250th anniversary, which I think this is just it's a great time for our country. And I may add, Joe, you talked about in the beginning of your show, or when that Elaine was the call-in guest. It was heartwarming to see tens of thousands of Americans last night who had to wait hours. You live here in the Northeast. We had some really violent weather last night. We had trees going down here in Philadelphia and the thunderstorms, but it was heartwarming to see Americans there, just kind of like hand in hand cheering, and the fireworks display. I watched it on TV was tremendous. And these are the kind of things that America embodies. We're together. We're enjoying the moment and celebrating what our great nation's all about. And Joe, this is what I like about when I'm on the show with you. You have this. You can go deep on the history and really lay it out. Certainly far better than I can, but I can certainly pose those things and we can get to the point with them. But I'm so happy that you do that, and the fact that again you live in Boston, I'm here in Philadelphia, and the immense amount of history. It's almost overwhelming at times.
It is. I mean, right, for Boston and Philadelphia guys to get together on 4th of July weekend is pretty cool, I think, and that great. And the other thing I want to point out before we go to phones here is I loved Matthew J., right? I loved watching, because the happy consequence of the World Cup being in America, being in the United States, I should say, and all of these foreigners, millions, tourists and travelers that came to this country and discovered America firsthand. And one of them put a post up that said, if you want to hate America, watch the media. If you want to love America, travel it. And the post of from all over Britain and Spain and Netherlands and Germany, and they're discovering America, and all the politics of fate is there. They're just meeting Americans, and they're finding out about Buc-ee's and Costco, and they're walking into department stores and supermarkets, and the choices they have are overwhelming them. The people that they're meeting, that you're watching these people eat biscuits and gravy for the first time, and the concept of free refills, that you go in and you have a cup of coffee and they'll keep filling your mug as long as you sit there, or you can go up to the fountain and do your soda, or they'll just keep bringing you soda after soda for one price. It does not exist, apparently, anywhere else in the world. So watching all of these, both, yes, the soccer players too, and the fans who have traveled here, watching America and then posting about it and saying this, and to see somebody like Josh from England and Britain coming on and saying, and he's not the only one, and apologizing and saying, we owe you an apology, because everything we thought you would be, everything we were told you would be, is just wrong. They thought they were going to come here and be confronted with ICE at the airport and detained, and that they was going to see this hellscape, and it was going to be this horrible, horrible place to be. And what they've found is freedom and choice and parks and people who are inviting them into their homes. And I think the World Cup has done so much for the image of the United States, and especially in our 250th year. The patriotism and the love for our country, I think, has seeped out, and all of these visitors are seeing it and feeling it, and they're going to go home and they're going to say, guys, don't believe what you see about America. Let me tell you about America. Let me tell you this. And I think that the ripple effect of that, Matthew, is going to be people returning, and the friends and family of those that have been here for these last few months are going to be like, you got to come. And it's done amazing things for exposing the true America to the rest of the world. The World Cup, that wasn't the plan. That wasn't it's a happy consequence of it. And I love it. And I love watching these people. But folks, 508-871-7000. Let's bring in West Virginia now. So
West Virginia.
Tom is in West Virginia. Tom, happy 4th to you. Matthew J. from Philadelphia is on with us. Obviously, you know I'm in Boston. And what's happening? How are you enjoying our 250th weekend?
I enjoyed it immensely. Did my fireworks in the holler last night, and I was the first one in this section of Marlinton, West Virginia. It's a small town. I lit off the first skyrocket at about 9:30, and then up on the high ground. I don't see the sun down here till about 9:30 in the morning, so I'm deep in a holler. Anyway, I opened the floodgates, and the fireworks probably went on a good 20 minutes last night with people above me with mortar shells going off. It was beautiful. And I grew up in Foxborough, Massachusetts. And 50 years ago, I was at Schaefer Stadium with the Elton John concert. And it was a phenomenal concert. I wasn't a huge fan of him back then because I'm 16 years old. My rock bands were, yes, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, The Who, and of course, the Bad Boys from Boston, Aerosmith. But I will say one thing, and I'm very glad to hear what Europeans have said, that if you want to hate America, watch the media. If you want to love America, go and see it.
Yeah.
And if I go back into Marlinton about 5 years ago, it was like a couple of years after I retired. I'm age 66 now, but long story short, I heard this guy at a dollar store screaming at me in the parking lot. And, you know, I just turned and looked. And it was this Chinese guy, which there's not a lot of Orientals down here in Pocahontas County. I spoke to him for 2 hours. And it turns out he was some sort of engineer up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, who went on essentially the old Mohawk Trail or Seneca Trail, 219, you know, that goes all the way up to New York State. And he told me, he goes, I love this country. He said, you can't imagine the freedom that you have where if I go back to China, I can't say what's on my mind. And for 35 years now, I've had a braid, and you know, and he holds my braid and he says, "In China, this is not allowed." I go, "Really?"
Wow.
And he says, "Whatever happened to the Ming Dynasty?" He says, "Only people who had braids back then were royalty." But anyway, no, it's great to hear, and I just pray to God that in November the country does not vote.
That's the right thing.
Because the simple fact is, thank God my senior year in high school, I stopped smoking weed. I took Russian history, and so much of what I learned in Russian history has paralleled the United States, from hate speech to censorship to religion is the opium of the people, except if you're Islamic, we're not going to make fun of that religion. It's unbelievable what's happened with this country and the deliberate change of demographics. And during the Clinton administration, I didn't realize it then. Bill Clinton told people like me what I wanted to hear about enforcing immigration laws, when in reality, his administration was telling people from south of the border, just come on in here, don't worry about it. And Barack Obama was the same thing. Donald Trump obviously has changed a lot of people's attitude of where they're not afraid anymore to speak up about illegal immigration. And, you know, when you invite people into this country that don't want to assimilate, that don't have common values to you, And I live in Brockton. I own a house there. And generally what I found is that the people that are from Africa that are Christians, they're the people that are assimilating. They want to be part of the community. And I really don't have an issue with that. Yeah. But I look at the place like Lewiston, Maine, of where 30 years ago, the Clinton administration dumped the Somalis up there. And I remember National Public Radio back then saying, why would you take people from Atlanta, which is a hot climate, and place them into one of the coldest places in the country? We didn't realize it back then. It was to change the demographics of the state of Maine.
Absolutely.
The same thing with the Obama administration.
Yeah.
And Ronald Reagan made a very great speech at the end of his presidency, and it was about immigrants coming to America. And one of his last lines in that speech, I'll be brief, he said, the immigrants that come here that give more than they take. And I am going to pick on Somalis. And I have a friend of mine, electrician buddy, his wife works for the Maine Department of Social Services. She said for 30 years now, the same people from Somalia are still on public assistance. And Brockton is a very diverse community. We have people from Central America that specialize in roofing. You know what? They're working. They're not milking the taxpayer. Yeah. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, there was one of the congressional hearings they had on this. I think it was the good-looking congressman. His name escapes me, Brian or something. But the point is, he ran through some of the stats as to, and I think he was specifically talking about Somalia and Minnesota and the number that were on the social programs, but they're into the second and third generation. And it's something like, 40% of those that have come in have been on this. So the other part of this, guys, is not every one of them, but there's a good portion of some of them illegal, some of them come through visa, who come here, but they're kind of educated on the way in that America has these welfare programs, these safety nets, and they laugh at us and they take advantage of it. They knowingly take advantage of it. And something that was designed to be a safety net for citizens, for us that, have been part of the system, fall on hard times, can be medical issues. And I've shared my background with medical issues very openly here 24 years ago, and I said coming out of it the other end, when they told me to get my affairs in order in March of 2001. But when I came home 8 months later, I said then, if you're going to get like really ill, deathbed ill, boy, do it in Massachusetts, because I got assigned caseworkers and they was going to put me in housing and all of this stuff. And it overwhelmed me as to the programs that existed. Now, at 35, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in a cinder block, housing unit. And I decided I was going to do what I do and get back when I could physically do it. And I did that. But it's set up for that. And people have fallen into this. And now we are literally multiple generations of people living on the safety net programs, meaning welfare and SNAP and so forth. And then the insult to this injury, guys, is as it's being exposed in real time for all of us now, here in Massachusetts, the SNAP benefit program has been abused. It's so much. And I've been talking about it. Other guys on my station, Howie Carr is on my station, who have talked about, a drug dealer gets busted and they've got 16 EBT cards in their possession. Yeah. Why do they have that? Then, you've got addresses where 20, 30 people with these EBT cards are supposedly live at that address. And I link this back to a story of, and I've shared it before, and probably the first time for you, Matthew J., and I don't know whether it's the first time for you, Tom, or not, but in 92, when I ran for state senate here, and I missed it, as Maxwell Smart would say, by that much. One of the things that they said to me is, hey, you want a state job. We want to keep you prime maybe for another run. And at the time, I had the family business, plus I had my real estate. And I said, I'm not taking a pay cut. No, I'm good. But the one job that I said I will take, it was to be an investigator for the Bureau of Special Investigation, which was the agency in Massachusetts whose primary task was fraud. And it would have been working on welfare fraud and food stamp fraud and all of that fraud. And they had something like 52 investigators, and a guy was retiring. And I met at next to the State House on what's the address? The well-known building, the state office building. I went in there, and I was going to replace this guy when he retired. And I said, the salary, it wasn't a huge salary, but I was confident I'd justify my salary in a month. I was going to find that much fraud of what I got paid or would have been paid in a year. But what happened is the Weld Salucci team did a rearrangement. Remember when they consolidated all the police departments? We lost the registry, right? They combined the registry, the state police, the environmental police, all of that. Well, the other thing they did is the BSI, Bureau of Special Investigation, was under the Department of Public Safety, like the state police and police agencies. They moved the BSI over to Health and Human Services. So it went from that investigative law enforcement over to Health and Human Services, and they cut the budget, which meant that they cut something like 16 investigators. So the guy I was going to replace, they decided not to replace him. So the job went away. The only job I was willing to take at 26 years old, at a big pay cut for me at that time, was the job that was going to find the fraud and expose it and stop it. And they did away with 16 of those investigators. And you got to ask yourself, and that's what at 26, I'm saying, what the hell is wrong with the government? Not only do you not get rid of those investigators, you should put another 20 on, because every one of them will make their salary times 10 back if you let them cut and expose the graft and the fraud taking place. To me, that was common sense. Yeah. So that's always been an issue. Not that I lost the job. I didn't need the job, but I was willing to take that pay cut and do that job, just that job. I didn't want to be a toll taker. I didn't want to be tucked away in some government, but I would have taken, and being a private investigator and owning a private investigation agency, I was like, I'm suited for that job. I'll take that job, and I will justify my salary 10 times, if not 100 times over.
Interesting story.
So it is what it is. Tom, thank you so much. And I'm assuming you guys, you said it, you kicked it off, West Virginia, having a wonderful time, I'm sure, with celebrating our anniversary and our birthday. Thanks for listening, and thanks for calling in.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Oh, Matthew J. Did
Joe,
you know that story about my Senate run in that job?
No, I didn't get that. I just was, that was interesting, was the whole time you were talking about that position, I'm thinking like, how do you disassemble the welfare state? It's so well embedded everywhere. How do you dismantle that?
Well, I think a good start is going after the fraud and the scamming, right? Go after that, because again, when there aren't consequences, and I'm talking whether anything, if your child misbehaves and there are no consequences, and you said there were going to be consequences and you don't follow through, what do you teach your child? That's just talk. There really isn't. I can do it again. Nothing's going to happen. Whether you're talking about the repetitive, the repeat criminal who constantly, and how many times in the last few years have we dealt with these stories of a person being pushed onto the tracks in a subway, set on fire? What about Carolina? Was it North Carolina? That poor Russian girl stabbed in the neck and murdered on public transportation. And every time one of these horrific stories come out, what do we find out? The person did it has been arrested 20, 30 times, right? That they should not have been on the street. They were not either mentally able to be in society, or they were just bad eggs that should not be allowed to walk among us. So the answer, I think, to your question is, you got to go after the fraud. There's got to be consequences for the abuse of these programs. If there are no consequences, they will continue to be abused, and it becomes a cottage industry. They actually teach people. I mean, you don't think people started getting coaching how to open up daycare centers, how to open up transportation companies that were allegedly driving these people because there's no vehicles? Or what about the hospice? Now we have dozens and dozens of hospice centers, and guess what? No one ever died in them. I mean, those are pretty phenomenal hospice centers where you go to die, but you don't die because that person with that name and that social security number that hospice got thousands of dollars per person, then all of a sudden is no longer in hospice, but they're home alive. So
it's not just Minneapolis, Joe. It's not just Minneapolis.
All over.
You're saying it's all over.
All over. Real quick, because we're against the clock, Tyler in Westfield. Tyler, happy 4th of July and happy Independence Weekend to you, sir.
Yes, sir. I am happy listening to you and Mark and the lady who called in. For myself, this is Mardi Gras. Mark, it's not taxation without representation. It's a horrifying abuse of fraud. And like Joe said, abuse of power, abuse of authority. And the sad reality is when you add up the transportation, the hospice, the food thing, it is billions. And this lady, Joe, you had on earlier, mentioning the angles with the lady with the 3 houses, how the commission for the weed went to someone before Governor Baker. There's so many angles, Joe. It's called filth factor.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Tyler, unfortunately, I got to hold you there because we're against the clock. Matthew J., thank you so much for jumping on. You'll be sitting in for me next Sunday. I'll be a married man by then. So thank you, Matthew J. Have a fantastic time next week. We'll talk during the week, and thank everybody else for watching, joining. And I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Oh, actually, I'll be back Wednesday for my show. Happy 4th of July, folks. Joe out.
This is WCRN, Worcester.